Ms. Contra, let's call this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. So we do have a very, very packed house this evening, which is exciting. We have a lot of recognitions. Typically in our boardroom, we don't, allow a standing room, but with the amount of recognitions, as we get through those, I'm sure it'll clear out after recognitions are complete. So this evening is a little different. So again, welcome everybody. Ms. Ewing, would you like to lead us in our pledge and moment of silence, please? And as we go through our moment of silence, if you find it in your hearts to keep our Sunset Heights and Liberty High families in your mind. One of our young scholars was hit by a vehicle this morning, so thank you for that. Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Okay, moving on to section 3, address agenda, consider adoption or recommend changes. So one thing I didn't announce before we started, is Dr. Sorensen with us? Dr. Sorensen, are you there, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect.
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you. So I just want to let everyone know that Dr. Sorensen will be joining us this evening remotely, but we only have him for a limited time. So in light of our, we have some action items. I definitely want him to be involved and listen to everybody's voices this evening. So I'd like to adapt our agenda accordingly, which would bring our action items up to just after 4.1, which is recognition. So we can get through recognitions, allow those families to go, and then we can get into our action items. And then, to be in line with Dr. Sorensen's time that, we have with him this evening. That said, in addition to that, I wouldn't mind adapting the action items as well. So moving the entire category up to just after 4.1 and then adjusting the action items current order to moving up 8.3 and 8.4 to the first and second position, and then moving down 8.1 and 8.2 to the third and fourth position. I'll just need a second for that.
I will second.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Are there any other, before we go to Ms. Contra on this, are there any other adaptations to the agenda that any of our governing board members would like to make? Ms. Hill? Okay. Ms. Rooks?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Ewing?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Contra, any questions on my motion to adapt the agenda this evening?
No, sir, but I'd like to read it back if that's okay.
Perfect.
Motion to adopt this agenda, moving action items to immediately after recognitions, reordering action items as follows. 8.3 and 8.4 to the position of 8.1 and 8.2, and 8.1 and 8.2 to the positions of 8.3 and 8.4, and approval of consent agenda.
Yes, that is perfect. So with that said, we do have a motion made by myself and a second by Mrs. Hill. With the understanding that Dr. Sorensen is with us remotely, if you can run us through a voice vote, as well as Mrs. Hill cannot log in to her Board Docs account, so we might have to do a voice vote this entire evening.
Not a problem, sir. President Sandoval.
Yay.
Dr. Sorensen.
Aye.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye.
Mrs. Rooks.
Aye.
Mrs. Ewing.
Aye.
Motion passes with 5 yeas. Thank you, board members. Ms. Contra, if you need a sec to rearrange the agenda, do we need a pause or?
President Sandoval, you can move on with recognitions. I will be moving those action items as advised while Mrs. Airy is talking.
Perfect. All right, very good. That said, we will move on to 4.1, recognitions. Ms. Airy.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, and guests that have joined us this evening. We have a couple of recognitions for you, but before we begin, I am so pleased to introduce everyone to Fifi McQuay. She is the student body president at Ironwood High School and joins us tonight representing not just Ironwood High School, but her peers across the Peoria Unified School District. She is a member of our Superintendent Student Advisory Council, and we're very pleased to have her here this evening.
Welcome.
Thank you all for having me. I feel very welcomed.
Very good. Well, welcome this evening. Like I said, this is a pretty full boardroom, which is great to see when we have so many individuals engaged in the education of our students and the district. But board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill?
Well, thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have the student body come and represent. You're representing your school, Ironwood, so we're just pleased to have you here and engaged in a government process, and we value your opinion. So thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Ricks?
Yes, thank you so much for being here. And I have to say I like that you both are wearing green. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, congratulations. You know, it's got to be great serving on your student council and, you know, wanting to help out your peers across the district. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Ricks. Mrs. Ewing?
Yes, I want to say thank you as well. Thank you for coming. I'd love to come out and hear from you on all of the different things you guys are working on and some feedback for the board. It'd be great. And again, congratulations on your position, and I hope you keep coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Yes, welcome this evening. Just as always, you know, for me, it's thank you for your leadership and thank you for stepping up to be that voice for your peers on the campus at Ironwood High School. You know, through many visits at Ironwood High School, there's a lot of great things that goes on at that site, across our district for sure, but Ironwood. And I've got to believe it's not only leadership and their teachers and staff, but it's your leadership being the voice for your peers to make sure that those voices are heard and communicated to the administrative staff there at Ironwood. So great job and welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. President Sandoval, members of the board, we do just have a couple of additional recognitions for you this evening. You'll note in the agenda that we were going to highlight the Peoria Arts and Cultural Festival, which took place just last weekend. We are going to table that recognition to an upcoming board meeting so that we can get everyone here in the room that we'd like to thank for putting on that incredible event. So we will begin by recognizing those that participated in our Patriotic Speech Contest. We recently hosted the 36th annual Patriotic Speech Contest, and if you have attended this event before or have been able to take part in the live stream, you will know it is really a hallmark of one of the things that's important to our district. It really is a fan favorite for students, staff, teachers. The students that participate in this contest won their respective school contests, and then they advanced to the district level. They came here and were able to compete against their peers from across the district. This contest creates an opportunity for our students to share their patriotism while perfecting their public speaking skills, and it really is something you won't want to miss in the future. We are recognizing our winners this evening, and so I know we have students crowded here in the room with some very proud families here supporting them tonight. And so students, when you hear me call your name, if you would stand so that we can recognize you, and then at the end we will invite you up here to the podium. So we'll begin in the 5th and 6th grade morning session. The first place winner, Jocelyn Sinigini from Apache Elementary School. In the 5th and 6th grade afternoon session, the first place winner, Taylor Berry from Frontier Elementary School. In the 7th and 8th grade morning session, the first place winner, Danica Dworshak from Coyote Hills Elementary School. And I believe I saw our proud principal, Mrs. Abbott, around here somewhere, so thank you for being here. In the 7th and 8th grade afternoon session, the first place winner, Kristen Ebo from Copperwood Elementary School. And I saw her very proud social studies teacher here, Stephanie Land from Copperwood Elementary. Thank you for being here. And a big congratulations to our students. So students, I'll invite you here up to the podium, and while you're making your way up here, I would just like to take a quick moment to thank our academic services team in curriculum and instruction for making sure that this contest goes off without a hitch. We also had many volunteers that support this event that we would like to thank. And so students, I'll have you come right around here. I know the governing board will want to say some nice things about you.
Welcome and congratulations, board members. Questions, comments? Mrs. Hill?
Well, congratulations to each and every one of you. I am just so proud of all of you for taking the task of writing a patriotic speech. That sometimes becomes a lost art these days, and I myself am very patriotic, and I think it's a wonderful thing that our youth are still very engaged and interested in creating patriotic speeches and having pride for their country. And you are definitely some of the best of our district and have performed well and represented us well, and we're very proud of you. Thank you again for putting forth the effort and producing such great pieces of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Rooks?
Yes, congratulations. It's got to be very exciting and nerve-wracking going through that process, but you guys did it. And I want to say congratulations to you, to your families here, and to your teachers in the back. Congratulations. And yeah, it's really great. I got to see the patriotic speech. I was here watching, so it was pretty cool to see all you guys up there and giving your speeches. So congratulations, you guys.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing?
Congratulations. I want to say that I've been in the classroom when students have been developing their patriotic speech, so I know how difficult it is to find the right definitions, understanding what they mean, how it applies to your personal life, and really bringing that to a speech that you're inspired by and it inspires other people. So congratulations on really digging in deep and finding that meaning for each one of you. And great job on all of your speaking skills. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Dr. Sorensen, comments?
Yeah, congratulations. Public speaking is very challenging. So you guys did a great job, and we're just very proud and grateful that you chose to do that and performed well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Yeah, I'll just echo what all my fellow board members have just spoke about with regard to this achievement. It does take a lot of courage to get up there and speak in front of a crowd, and so having that confidence and taking those life skills that you've learned going through the process, right? Mrs. Ewing talked about inspiration. I'll tell you, I was here for the morning session, and I'm always inspired, with regard to the accomplishments of our students across this entire district. But when you get up there and speak, like I said, in front of a crowd without understanding how they're going to respond, that takes a lot of courage. So congratulations on having that courage and confidence. Continue to have that courage and confidence as you further your career here at Peoria Unified and beyond our walls. So great job, and great job to the teachers and staff and admin at those sites who continue to lead and grow and really inspire hope in our students. So thank you as well. Congratulations again. Great job.
Well, and we will have that video up for everybody to watch the playback from their speeches by the beginning of April. So we'll be excited to share that with our community. Thank you, and congratulations again, students. Well, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, tonight we are sharing an act of great heroism that took place at Sunrise Mountain High School. We're highlighting 2 Sunrise Mountain students who came to the aid of a teacher in medical distress, and with their help and that of a few others, saved his life. Prior to winter break, Sunrise Mountain special education resource teacher Thomas Grice suffered a cardiac arrest while teaching a small group of students. Sophomore Austin Fisk and senior Christian Newman acted quickly, one notifying the school nurse that he needed help while the other called 911. Thanks to their swift response, Jessica Plouffe, the nurse, responded and began compressions until she was relieved by School Resource Officer Rachel Gaines and Peoria Police Motor Officer Tanner Soule. Thanks to their quick actions, all of these individuals, we are more than grateful to share that Mr. Grice is still here with us today and has joined us this evening. I believe he's here with a fan club. I know his wife has joined this evening back there, and I know that they are just beyond excited that so many were able to come to their rescue. You should know that I did ask Mr. Grice if he would come up here to share a few words this evening, but he is insistent that this recognition is about those that step forward to offer that quick response. And so I would like to acknowledge Officer Soule, who is, I believe, now working towards becoming a firefighter. And I believe both he and Officer Gaines are here with us this evening. If they're here and can give a quick wave for us. Thank you for being here. We are also honored to have Peoria's interim chief, Marcel Spalding, here with us tonight representing Peoria Police. And also so thrilled to introduce Nurse Plouffe, who has joined us this evening. And those students, Austin and Christian, are you here? If you could stand. If you could stand so we can give you a big round of applause. And students, I'll invite you up here. I know the governing board will want to share a few remarks, as well as their principal, Mr. Vance Setka.
Here with you guys.
Welcome, gentlemen. Mrs. Hill?
Wow, so impressive. You'd like to think if you were in a situation where it was a life-threatening situation that people would come to your aid quickly and know what to do and not panic. That's exactly what you did. We don't like to use the word hero lightly, and I don't here, and you know that means a lot that you actually stepped up to the plate and you did what was needed just to make sure that people were taken care of and that his needs were met and medical attention was given to him and that he was now with us tonight. It's just miraculous, and it's a blessing that you were there and you were able to assist, and who knows, maybe firefighting or EMT or ambulance, EMT is in your future. I don't know. This would be resume appropriate. But thank you so much for coming to the aid of someone in great need. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Rooks?
Yeah, there's no words for what you guys have done. You saved a person's life. So thank you so much for taking those steps, for acting quick, and making sure to do the right thing to save someone's life. And I want to say thank you to the officers for also being there and getting there quickly, and to the school nurse. I actually went to high school with her, so that's pretty awesome that that she's there now back at Sunrise, and you guys are all working together to save a person's life. That's amazing. So congratulations, and thank you so much for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing?
Yes, I echo the thank you. Those types of skills that you guys learned I'm sure are not something that you want to be using frequently, but they are so needed. And it's so amazing that in the moment you knew exactly what to do, stepped up, took charge, and did what was needed and that says a lot also about how much you care about your teacher as well, and making sure that he got the help that he needed. So really appreciate that. Fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Austin, Christian, it's just, I mean, like I said, I'm always inspired by our youth here in Peoria Unified, and you're part of the reason why. You know, we talk about this district and why we're here, and yes, academic success without question, but our teachers, our staff, our leaders, in addition to that, are also, you know, focused on, you know, developing really the character of our society in the future, and really developing individuals who understand what it means, you know, to how we rise by lifting up others, right? So just, you know, the human skills that you displayed, and I'm certain you're great students as well. So, but just great job, and yes, thank you, officers who responded, you know, very timely. The relationship that we have with our, you know, EMS, if you will, throughout the city of Peoria is invaluable. And Mr. Grice, it's great to see you, sir. Austin, Christian, great job, and just thank you for being who you are. Vance, any words?
President Sandoval, we're extremely thankful, grateful for everyone involved there. It's a situation where everybody acted exactly the way you would hope they would, and we got the outcome there, and it does say a lot about the students behind me, students in the class, and our staff on campus. So we're very fortunate for the people that we have on our campus and our district to support one another in times of need.
Thank you for that. Gentlemen, keep up the greatness. Thank you. All right, I'm going to apologize to everybody. Dr. Sorensen, I apologize. Out of sight, out of mind. Any words for the current recognition?
Only thing I would say is that I think teenagers get a bad rap. And this is just another example that gives me faith that our youth and our future of our free world is in good hands. So just an amazing accomplishment and amazing action. So thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Dr. Sorensen. All right, Ms. Airy. That's all, sir. All right. So before we move on to our action items, families who are involved in recognitions and those who wish to move on outside of the boardroom, grab dinner, are more than welcome to do so now. We'll pause for a sec. Thank you for being here this evening. Hey, Ms. Contra, if I refresh, will it show the new order, or try that and see what you get? Does it need to be named action items because it's in recognitions? Does it say action? Oh, hey, Jim. I might need help sorting these because I'm sure the numbers have changed. So Do we, oh, you know what, let me go off this. The rehire list is 8.3. Thank you. All right, here's 8.3. All right, so I've got. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I apologize for that delay. We just had to reorganize our public comment slips here. So I think we've got it all under control. All right, so that said, moving on to 4.2, approval of rehire list for the issuance of contracts with certified staff, related service providers, psychologists, and administrators for the 2023-2024 school year. So I do have, looks like a few public comments tied to this line item. As always, we will listen to the districts, listen to public comment, and then we'll get into board questions and comments in that order, okay? Ms. Vesley, welcome.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, cabinet, and guests. Tonight, I bring before you contracts in our rehire list for our certified employees, related service providers, psychologists, and administrators. We've been working over the past 4 weeks on reconciliation meetings with every school and every department to ensure that we know who's resigning, retire, and who wishes to return for the 23-24 school year. We held over 60 meetings with all of our schools and departments. We also had a small but mighty team that then takes that information and moves into the contract building and generation. I want to thank personally Matthew Coley, our HR director, Carmen Miranda, our HR supervisor, Jackie Cullinan, who is part of our HR department, Mona Rodriguez from payroll, and Christy Davis from benefits. It's these 5 that go behind closed doors for about a week and a half to ensure that we have contracts for those, the right FTE, the right salary, so that we can bring this list forward to you tonight. So with that, I am recommending and asking for your approval tonight to approve the rehire list so that we may issue contracts tomorrow.
Thank you, Ms. Vesley. All right, we'll listen to public comment now, and then we'll bring you back up. All right, public rules of conduct. During public comment, the board president shall keep control of the meeting and require the speakers and the audience to refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, applause, protests, or other conduct which disrupts or interferes with the orderly conduct of the business of the meeting. Personal attacks on board members, staff, or members of the public are not allowed. It is inappropriate to utilize a public hearing, the public comment segment, or any other agenda items for the purpose of making political speeches. Engaging in such conduct and failing to cease such conduct upon request of the presiding officer will be grounds for ending a speaker's time at the podium or for the removal of any disruptive person from the meeting room at the direction of the board president. That said, we'll spend 30 minutes in public comments and 3 minutes per commenter. First public comment comes from Winnie Van Wee. Ms. Van Wee? I should say first public comment tied to this line item. Welcome.
Hello. Okay, so I didn't prepare anything because I just found out a couple days ago that Holly Webb's contract is up for renewal to stay a teacher in the district. And I'm going to refrain from saying the words that she chose to say in front of students at Liberty High School because there are children in the room, and I feel uncomfortable, and I want to consciously respect the children that are in the room. I emailed every single board member a couple days ago with the PowerPoint that she presented that had, I wish I could say the words, you guys, because I as a parent, first of all, I know the people left with that saved the teacher's life. We should congratulate those parents for raising such good children. So here I am as a parent trying to protect my child from sexually explicit content. But Ms. Webb, and I hope she's listening to this because she's lucky she didn't hear from me. I talked to Mr. Duguid and I had a very respectful conversation with him. Ms. Vesley and I had a very respectful conversation. Dr. Reynolds, you and I had a very respectful conversation. And the fact that this woman is still employed by PUSD is repulsive and it's disheartening. I am truly flabbergasted that you didn't listen to what I had to say, you didn't listen to what I had to say, and Mr. Duguid didn't listen to what I had to say. There are children that went to Mr. Duguid and corroborated my daughter's story on what she heard. And I swear to you, she's going to go to an elementary school. Come on, you guys, do better for our students. I can't speak the words. There was sexually explicit content in a PowerPoint presentation, which I sent to you guys, which is on Moodle. And come to find out, Ms. Vesley, who's an HR person, doesn't have access to Moodle. How do you not have access to Moodle? This is very concerning, highly concerning as a parent, that teachers are making up their own curriculum, putting it on a PowerPoint presentation on a program that an HR person doesn't have access to. I didn't know about it until my daughter had sent it to me, and I'm sitting reading it to Mrs. Vesley. So sorry, Mrs. Vesley, that I had to read those disgusting, deplorable words. Had no idea that was there until I started reading it. And again, Miss Vesley doesn't have access to that. Help me understand how that is possible for a HR person, and for Dr. Reynolds, you said you don't even know if you have access to it. You should have access to Moodle. I should have access to Moodle as a parent. I didn't even know it existed, to be honest with you. And maybe that's the fault of the teacher, I don't know. But I'm here to tell you, and Holly Webb, I hope you're listening and you're lucky I didn't get a hold of you, because the disgusting, vile words that she said in front of my daughter cannot unhear, she cannot unlearn, she cannot unknow what she heard from an adult child. Our adult teacher.
Thank you, Ms. Van Wee. Next public comment comes from Ms. Jody Brackett. Ms. Brackett, before you begin, I just want to reiterate. No, you're fine. You're fine. You can step up. Your time won't start yet. I know the feelings that are coming out of individuals that approach our podium are very real, without question. And one of the things that I said in our last board meeting is, during public comments, if we can really be centered around focusing on the issue versus the person, meaning naming the name, especially in commentary that may be deemed as, a personal attack. I mean, one thing I do want to remind everybody that these individuals have families, they have children, parents, spouses. I just want to reiterate the fact, or really reiterate and ask that, if we can stay centered around the issue versus the individual, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Ms. Brackett, welcome.
This is about Ms. Chuini's renewal for teaching here in PUSD. I'm a Desert Harbor parent, and there needs to be accountability. Ms. Chuini was caught using school email to push her pronouns onto her kids and staff and told them she wanted everyone to participate in using pronouns. For her students and staff to wear transgender colors for celebrating the Transgender Day. This was secretly done by Ms. Chuini behind closed doors and without any parents or community's knowledge of this happening. She gets a slap on the hand, and now she is up for renewal for teaching in PUSD. She is back at Desert Harbor and even using a different name. So, no more. Do your job. Vote no. No more of this. No renewal for Ms. Chuini. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brackett. Public comment comes from Will Williams. Will Williams? Will Williams.
I'm sorry, I've never been to one of these before. And Heather, congratulations, I voted for you. So anyway.
Yep, we do. Yep. Sorry, Ms. Williams, go ahead.
I just have a problem with Carly Borland. She's the athletic director of Calais High School. I don't know if she's up, but she needs to just not be the athletic director. Our daughter got stuck in the girls' locker room when an opposing football team came and took over that locker room. She did not do her job to see that there were no girls in there. She was hunkered down in a stall, texting her brother. Carly didn't address it with me, didn't call, say, I'm sorry for what your daughter went through. It took 3 weeks, and the first home wrestling meet that my daughter had, we made eye contact, and I confronted her, Mrs. Williams, I'm sorry that I can't give you my undivided. Apparently, you can't give it to me on school hours either, so you're going to do it right now. And then she tried to throw the coach under the bus by saying, who let her in the locker room in the first place? I said, you're the athletic director. You're the athletic director. It's your job to see that your students and athletes are safe. Our daughter is a freshman. We had no idea where she was. It was a makeup football game on a Monday that should have been on a Friday. And our daughter didn't want me to get this out there. And I asked her today, can I get your story out there? Because everything is being swept under the rug at Raymond S. Callis. I got a variance to go to that school. Our able son with Down syndrome has been there for 5 years, thought it was a great school. I'm not liking this school district. I'm ready to put them in online school if she wasn't so active and so in love and wanting to make a difference as a student. She's getting straight A's, has done swimming and wrestling, and now track. She's on varsity on all 3. And I don't want her to miss out on what school has opportunities for her. But if this is the help that our girls are going to get in a locker room where she was hunkered down, can you imagine? And Carly Borland is still the athletic director. Mr. Vining is just as bad, the principal. He didn't do anything until I asked him 3 weeks after the fact, can you at least go up to our daughter, put your arm around her and say, I'm sorry for what you went through? Okay? Do something about these leaders. We had a child OD last week. Luckily, he didn't die. Stripped almost naked in the cafeteria. Were we ever notified? No, we have to find out from our students. Asked a teacher who is our youth director at our church, asked me, do you know anything that's going on? Only what the students are telling her. The office doesn't tell us anything as teachers. The communication at Callis has got to improve. When our daughter had panic attacks, we weren't even told about it. The nurse never even told us about it.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. All right, that concludes public comment tied to this line item. Ms. Fesley, do you mind? Welcome back. All right, board members, questions, comments? Mrs. Hill.
I do really expect our teachers to do better. I do. I find it difficult to approve all the contracts when there are obvious teachers that are not fulfilling their job obligations and they're not keeping our kids safe and they're not following our policies. I expect our teachers to, hold themselves to a higher level and be a great representative, great role models for our kids and protect them. I just find it very difficult to approve all of these contracts.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Ricks, actually, give me a sec. Board members, I just want to reiterate that this line item is focused on approving the rehire list to issue contracts as early as tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
That's correct.
Again, everybody who has spoken, you just spoke, Mrs. Hill. I know these feelings are real, but there is, a process that we have to go through addressing any concerns that there may be tied to any of our associates across the district. So I just want to stay centered around the ask that administration is asking us to do this evening. Mrs. Rooks.
Well, I have to go with Rebecca Hill on this. I think that we need to take a hard look at some of the rehires on the lists, and that's what they're asking us to do tonight, is rehire every single person on every PowerPoint slide here. And I think that there are some individuals that should not be rehired in our district because we are supposed to be presenting our district as the best. And what I just heard is not the best. And I can't, as a board member and as a person, as a parent, rehire individuals with that type of, they're supposed to be leaders. We are supposed to have teachers that are leaders. We're supposed to have principals, athletic directors, school psychologists, the admin, all of these people that you're asking us to rehire, they're supposed to be leaders and they're supposed to be upheld. And I can't approve a rehire list for individuals that don't stand up to that level.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Dr. Sorensen, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right. Would love any questions, comments that you may have tied to this line item.
I don't have any questions. My only comments would be that everyone deserves due process and accountability for these individuals that are being spoken about should fall in the hands of those leaders. And we hold our superintendent accountable, and he should hold his leaders accountable. And that's where I'm on that. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Mrs. Ewing?
Thank you. Would it be outside this line item to ask what the process is for the due process is? Should there be a discipline? Is that outside the?
No, I think, Ms. Fesley, you can address any
There are statutory requirements, President Sandoval, members of the board, that we as a school district must follow, both for probationary teachers and for continuing teachers. We also seek legal counsel when we go through due process at times. And what I can share is due process has been given. We have followed process, and we will continue to follow process.
Thank you.
Mrs. Rooks?
Yes, President Sandoval. I guess then, Dr. Reynolds, since you're the leader of all of these employees, are you okay with the 3 spoken tonight being allowed to be in this district?
Well, I'm not going to speak about individual personnel issues. I can say that I'm confident in our Human Resources Department, very confident in the work that they do to address any issues that come up, and that every employee on this list is deemed rehireable as of today.
Ladies and gentlemen, please refrain from outbursts. No, I get it. Thank you, Dr. Reynolds, for that. Board members, any other questions, comments? So, yeah, I'll piggyback on what, really Mrs. Rook's question, which was mine, really, asking the district, this rehire list, it's being presented of individuals who are deemed as rehireable throughout, across all employee groups, right? Or across these categories that are listed here. And Dr. Sorensen mentioned due process. Everyone is afforded that certainly that opportunity. Like I said earlier, this line item is to approve the rehire list. We do have a process as a district that we follow to address concerns that we have across any of our associates. But that isn't what we're discussing this evening. So, Mrs. Ewing?
I had a quick question. Thank you. So, let's say this got approved, that doesn't stop the due process on any potential individuals. Am I correct on that? Those two? Am I allowed to ask that?
That is correct.
And there's not an opportunity because I worry that if this doesn't get approved, we have not just 3 contracts, that then it's all of these contracts, which is a lot.
That's
and
correct.
So there's no process or no ability to pull. Not that I'm suggesting that, I just don't want all of these other individuals' contracts to be delayed, which could cause us to lose in potential employees.
And yeah, I'm sure that's certainly open, but again, there is a process to address concerns across all of our associates. This evening, what we're being asked is to approve the rehire list. Once that's approved, if there are concerns across these individuals, we follow that protocol, and they're afforded that opportunity. So that said, any further questions, comments? Dr. Reynolds, did you have something?
No, I would just agree with you that we do have a process that we follow. Again, our Human Resources Department, I'm confident in the work that they do every single day. This is not that process to follow through with discipline.
Ms. Steele, did you have another comment?
No, I guess I'm in the position because I would like to pull Sarah Chinui and Holly Webb from the list and then move to approve the contracts of everyone else.
President Sandoval, do you?
Yeah, I just
Ms.
want to
Fesley, would you like
reiterate
to?
the outburst in the boardroom? It's just it's rude to others. I want to make sure that everybody's able to hear what's being said, so thank you. I'm sorry, Dr. Reynolds.
President Sandoval, members of the board, in order to move forward with certain requests, it would be my recommendation that you seek legal counsel, because there are statutory requirements for both probationary and for continuing teachers that would need to be followed. The board would need to direct for a probationary teacher our superintendent as well as human resources to offer a letter of non-renewal. For continuing teachers, the board would need to direct Superintendent Reynolds to move towards a statement of charges towards individuals, and there may not be enough support, or instead of saying support, there may not be that time, and this is not the time in which to do that. And so my recommendation would be to look at legal counsel as well before we take those steps.
Thank you for that. All right.
Well, I'd like to second Rebecca Hill's motion that she made.
Okay. Ms. Contra, are you clear on Ms. Hill's motion?
I believe motion to approve the rehire list without Sarah Chinui and Holly Webb. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
And we have a second by Mrs. Rooks. If you'll give me just a moment to edit the motion.
Okay.
President Sandoval, would you like me to take a voice vote because Dr. Sorensen is still online, I believe?
Yes. Sorry, I'm just reading the motion.
And I can read through it for you if you'd like before we take the vote. Motion to approve the rehire list and authorize the issuance of contracts for certified staff-related service providers, psychologists, and administrators for the 2023-2024 school year without Sarah Chinui and Holly Webb. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
All right. If you want to run us through a voice vote, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yes, sir. President Sandoval.
Nay.
Dr. Sorensen.
Nay.
Mrs. Hill.
Aye.
Mrs. Rooks.
Aye.
Mrs. Ewing.
Nay.
Motion fails. That said, motion fails 3 nays, 2 yays. Thank you, board members. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you one more time to please refrain from outbursts. Right. At this point, I would need a motion to approve the rehire list and authorize the issuance of contracts for certified staff, related service providers, psychologists, and administrators for the 2023-2024 school year.
I will motion for the approval of the rehire list for the issuance of the contracts for the certified staff, related service providers, psychologists, and administrators for the 2023-2024 school year.
I'll second that. Ms. Contra, we have a motion made by Mrs. Ewing, a second made by myself. If you can run us through a voice vote, please.
President Sandoval.
Yay.
Dr. Sorensen.
Yay.
Mrs. Hill.
Nay.
Mrs. Rooks.
Nay.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yay.
Motion passes with 3 yays and 2 nays. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to, thank you, Ms. Fesley. Moving on to 4.3, approval of retention stipend for eligible Peoria Unified employees, certified, classified, and
I
administered.
apologize, but I have to exit now. I apologize.
Oh. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
All right, I'll just reread. 4.3, approval of a retention stipend for eligible Peoria Unified employees, certified, classified, and administrators for the school year 2023-2024.
Yes.
Ms. Myers, how are you?
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the Governing Board, and Dr. Reynolds. Tonight I will share information about the budget team and administration's continued work related to retention stipends in the district. During the presentation, I will also provide historical information related to district retention stipends in the past and specific recommendations for staff who return to work for the district next year. Employee retention stipends have been in place for several years in the Peoria Unified School District for employees who sign and return their contract or letter of reasonable assurance on time and report to work in the new year. Retention stipends have historically been paid from a non-M&O funding source. Prior to fiscal year 2022, the Medicaid and Public Schools Fund has served as a funding source for retention stipends. In fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, grant funding and M&O carry forward have also supported the increased amount of the retention stipend payments to assist the district in being competitive to retain its current workforce. In fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, retention stipend amounts increased due to additional grant funding and included new dollars from ESSER 2, ESSER 3, DES grants, and the State of Arizona 100-day in-person grant, which supported a $2,345 one-time retention stipend that was approved last summer for employees who were employed by the district in the 2020-2021 school year and returned to work in fiscal year 2023. The new federal grants and state grants are sunsetting this fiscal year, with the exception of ESSER 3, which will continue through fiscal year 2024. ESSER 3 will not be used for future retention stipends at this time due to remaining ESSER 3 grant funds already being committed to other budget priorities, including textbook adoptions. Challenges related to retaining qualified staff continue for the district, in part due to ongoing competition from other employers and sister school districts. Although retention stipends are not guaranteed and are evaluated on an annual basis, the budget team and administration are recommending that they should continue to be an incentive for staff to return to the district in the new school year. Based on available funds, the budget team and administration are recommending that the retention stipends be adjusted back to $500 at this time. The projected cost for a $500 stipend for eligible employees will be $2.1 million, including benefits. So that dollar amount includes employer taxes that are required to be paid in addition to the $500, and it will be funded from our Medicaid and Public Schools Fund, as well as M&O carry forward and other eligible funding sources, including the National School Lunch Program grant for our food service workers, and community education funds for Kids Zone and community education employees. To be eligible for the retention stipend, employees must be eligible to receive a contract or a letter of reasonable assurance for fiscal year 2024. They also need to return their contract or letter of reasonable assurance on time. They also need to report to work in the new school year, either on July 1st or at the start of their contract or work assignment. And they also need to be employed at the scheduled date when the stipend will be paid. And with that, this concludes the presentation related to the retention stipends, and Mrs. Vesley and I are both available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. We do not have any public comment tied to this line item, and as everyone heard, Dr. Sorensen had to leave, so we'll be finishing this evening with the four of us. Mrs. Hill, questions, comments?
No comments. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Rooks?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing?
I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward. I think it's always important to provide benefits to bring our employees back. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Yeah, agreed. I mean, when I was first elected back in 2016, not all of our employee groups got the retention stipend. So it's good to see how the district continues to prioritize its people, which, when you create work environments that are inspiring, where people feel valued and respected, it positively impacts the classroom. And we've talked about many times over the last few weeks, month, where 37 out of 42 schools are A-rated. So there's a lot of great work that's going on throughout the district, and it's a result of individuals feeling, again, valued and respected. So thank you for that. All right, if no further questions or comments, I do need a motion to approve a $500 retention stipend for eligible employees, certified, classified, and administrators for the timely return of their contracts and letters of reasonable assurance, return to work in the new school year, and who are employed by the district when the stipend is scheduled to be paid. A motion that we approve 4.3, approval of the retention stipend for eligible Peoria Unified employees.
And I will second.
Ms. Contra, we have a motion made by myself, a second made by Mrs. Rooks. If you can run us through a voice vote, that'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you, President Sandoval.
Yay.
I will mark Dr. Sorensen not present. Mrs. Hill.
Aye.
Mrs. Rooks.
Aye.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yay.
Motion passes with 4 yeas and 1 not present. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Mrs. Myers. All right, moving on to 4.4, approval of administrative appointment. Executive Director for Exceptional Student Services beginning July 1st, 2023. Mrs. Vesely, welcome back. We do have public comment tied to this slide item, so we'll allow you to speak. We'll listen to public comment, and then we'll get into board members' questions and comments. Thank you.
Good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, cabinet, and guests. It is my honor to bring forth a recommendation for the Executive Director of Exceptional Student Services. We are asking for your approval tonight to approve Mrs. Lori Garcia as our next Executive Director. Currently, Mrs. Garcia serves Peoria Unified as the Director of Special Education and has done so for the past 2 years. Prior to this role, she also served as one of our special education coordinators. She's been a director in Alhambra Elementary District, both for Exceptional Student Services and Director of Teaching and Learning. She's been a Special Services Program Coordinator and an Assistant Principal in previous districts here in Arizona as well. I would also like to share that we just received word as well today that Peoria Unified School District's Exceptional Student Services has been recognized for exceeding the statewide participation target for post-school outcomes under her leadership. The statewide participation target rate is 80%, and Peoria Unified School District had a rate of 95%, along with exceeding the statewide engagement rate of 72.4% for Peoria Unified's engagement rate that was over 90%. I'd also like to share that we had a committee. We went through 2 rounds of interviews. We had over 20 individuals that participated in our interview process, including parents, teachers, principals, site administrators, classified staff, as well as district administrators. So it is my privilege and hope again that you will look at Mrs. Garcia as our next Executive Director of Exceptional Student Services.
Thank you, Mrs. Vesey. Like I said, there's a couple public comments tied to this line item. I won't read the public rules of conduct again. I think everybody is, I don't believe we have any new faces tied to this line item. That said, public comment, first public comment tied to this line item comes from Ms. Devin Day. To who? Is it Lucretia Allen?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you had a green slip. Welcome.
Thank you. Members of the board, staff, parents, and students, I am here today on behalf of parents who have children on an IEP. We opened up this meeting today with a pledge claiming liberty and justice for all, but that doesn't happen here in PUSD. Last meeting, we had a gentleman who addressed the lack of transparency here at the district. While he was trying to be very politically correct, that is not my objective. I am here to put Jason Riddles and the governing board on blast. The board is committed to a policy of non-discrimination in relation to race, color, religion, sex, age, national origin, and disability. The policy will prevail in all matters concerning staff members, students, the public, educational programs and services, and individuals with whom the board does business. On January 25th, 2023, at 11:40 a.m., I received a letter from Ms. Lori Garcia, which most of you are aware of. This letter sent to me was claiming that she was going to stop my daughter's transportation, who was a special ed student, if I did not comply with her request. This is not the type of person we need working for Peoria School District, and I urge you to reconsider her. As we have heard, she is now the district director of special education, and instead of disciplining her, you guys are promoting her. And that is a grave injustice, not only to our students, but to the district. You guys can take this and pass it around.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. All right, Ms. Fesley, we have no further public comment on this line item. Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Hill?
I guess no comments at this time.
Mrs. Rooks?
No comments.
Mrs. Ewing?
I appreciate Mrs. Hardiman, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, coming forth and talking on this. I do believe that we have a process to be handling this particular complaint, if I'm correct on that.
That is correct.
Who would be the one to answer that? And I just ask that we make sure that it's all being handled appropriately and as swiftly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Mrs. Hill?
I guess I'm just trying to process this because this is the first time I'm really hearing about it. So I'm just trying to piece it together. So, it's difficult for me to make a decision because I actually am just receiving this information right now. So it's very current for me. So I'm just trying to go through this. So.
Dr. Reynolds, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, there's many questions, right? I mean, there's what we have in front of us. There's the person who's, from an associate perspective, who's being listed and was referenced in the public comment. Obviously, that would be a totally different conversation than what we're having this evening. And Ms. Hill, to your point, I don't know that we'd be able to get all parties involved to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, President Sandoval, Ms. Fesley, you want to talk a little bit about that process. We've gone through an extensive process. Ms. Garcia is highly regarded within our district. If there are situations where there are complaints, we do have a process for that, as Ms. Vesley indicated. And then we follow that process each and every time. But tonight we are bringing the recommendation for Ms. Garcia, and we stand by that recommendation.
Okay.
Mr. President Sandoval, if I guess with bringing forward Ms. Garcia, I know I've had concerns brought to me from our special education families. And so I just think that we need to be very cautious with this today. And I guess the question is, how has the job been handled at the time that she's been in the other position, which is Director of Special Education? And how has our special education students been served in that capacity? I think that we also have to look at when we're bringing in somebody who was in a previous role, you know, how has that been going on? And if there's been many concerns brought forward or there's been things that have been going on, I think that we need to really look at that too. And I know you said you interviewed other people, but I guess for me, that's just where I'm seeing, we need to be able to see more when you're bringing somebody that has been in that role. What does that look like every day? And just if we're truly meeting the needs of every special needs student in this district, because that's, again, it's a leadership role.
So, Ms. Ricks, we're in a constant mode of continuous improvement. We walk our sites and our departments through that process. Ms. Garcia has been a leader in that area of developing continuously improving plans with our, like I said, with our schools, with our departments. She has been an exemplary employee, and the committee unanimously recommended her for this position. Committees,
President
by the way.
Sandoval, members of the board, may I also add that we go through a process when we are screening for candidates. It includes classified staff, parents, teachers, administrators, and overwhelmingly in both rounds, Mrs. Garcia unanimously was our top lead. I think that speaks to the work that she's done not only in Peoria but across the state. If you were to talk with our principals, you will hear from them that we have a leader in Mrs. Garcia. She continues to work to bring inclusivity to Peoria. She works tirelessly with our federal programs department, our preschool department, our ELL department, our gifted department. She trains all of our principals, and she's been an integral role in continuing to look at our CNA process, looking at every school's needs assessment. She's been out to every school during their goal reviews this year and will continue to do so to bring the best that we can to our students. I also want to add that there are special education laws and processes in place. There's agencies that support parents that also Mrs. Garcia and her team provide to parents. There's educational opportunities that Mrs. Garcia has brought to parents in our district about advocacy, about IEP, about the laws around that. And there's also ADE processes in place for parents when there are concerns.
So if I can just piggyback on what you said with the IEPs, have those been up to date with Ms. Garcia, I guess just in general? Because obviously I just started in January, so I just have all that, like the IEPs, have they been, because I know you have to, an IEP, you have to renew it every year and keep up with that with our special needs students in the district. So has that been occurring? I guess is where
there is a continual process in place, President Sandoval, members of the board, not only to look at the services that we provide to our students at the high school and elementary level, but there is a compliance officer that works alongside all of our schools and our site administrators to ensure that we are keeping up to date. I can't speak on every IEP, but I believe we have over 5,000 students on IEPs, and those are continually looked at, as well as we go through an audit with the Arizona Department of Education. I want to say about every 3 years, please correct me if I'm wrong, where ADE comes in and also reviews the process of our IEPs and our programming. And I believe that just happened last year. We're in year one again of monitoring. So there is that constant process from the Department of Education as well.
So, Ms. Vesely, when you talked about the number of students that are on IEP, this role is expanding a little bit, right? Students with special needs also. Well, can you talk about the expansion a little bit in a very high level way, if you don't mind? Is that appropriate, or Dr. Hernandez?
President Sandoval, if you wouldn't mind, I would like Dr. Hernandez to respond to that question, please.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, guests, and cabinet. In our Exceptional Services Division, we are looking to support all of our special populations and really understanding who our learners are. So looking at our populations of not only students with disabilities, but students who have language needs, gifted needs, and in those areas, for examples, including preschool and whatnot. And so from that perspective, we're really looking to understand our learners' needs and identify from there what are the teaching resources and supports those learners need. So we're highlighting that piece with this role to be able to really support not only all students in the learning that occurs from a continuous improvement standpoint, but also from a very specialized standpoint, which we know students in those categories need those additional supports.
Gotcha. Thank you for
And
that.
just, President Settle, if we can point out, Dr. Hernandez directly supervises this position, and neither she or I would bring this position to you for recommendation if we weren't 100% confident in Ms. Garcia.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And, you know, there's no doubt, I mean, when we take a look at this very large district, and you talk about an accolade that was just realized today, if I'm not mistaken, is that right?
That is correct, yes, President Sandoval.
You know, it's not a small lift, you know, and, you know, I know this vertical, if you will, is absolutely part of our village and needed to ensure that, you know, all of our students are given an equitable opportunity to be successful, right? And we always meet them where they're at, regardless of where they're from, socioeconomic status, or, you know, certainly our you know, high achieving students and our students with special needs and McKinney-Vento foster kids. I mean, we're 38,000 of 38,000 is of a bunch of different stories, right? So I've always been very inspired by the work that this district does to meet students where they're at, which includes Ms. Garcia and her team. I know this line is very specific to appointing her to that position of the Executive Director of Exceptional Student Services. Is that right? Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. So that's it. I mean, it's based on the district's recommendation. There are a lot of great work is going on, and what I will ask is that you know, the district does reach out to not only those individuals that spoke, you know, during 4.2, but also the individual that spoke during 4.4 to make sure that you know, we listen and understand how they're feeling, and you know, see how we can be a solution. So
We absolutely will.
Yeah, thank you for that. So that said, I'm certainly in support of this move. If no further questions, comments, I do need a motion to approve the administrative appointment for the position of Executive Director for Exceptional Student Services effective July 1st, 2023.
I will motion for the approval of the administrator appointment of Executive Director for Exceptional Student Services beginning July 1st, 2023.
I'll second that. Ms. Contra, if you can run us through a voice vote, that'd be great.
President Sandoval,
Yay.
Mrs. Hill,
I guess abstain at this point.
Mrs. Rooks,
Nay.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yay.
All right, motion passes with 2 yeas, 1 abstain, 1 nay, and 1 not present. Thank you, board members. Ms. Fessley, thank you very much. Ms. Garcia,
President Sandoval, I apologize. According to this, 2 yea, 1 nay, and 1 abstain, and 1 not present. It says the motion fails.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is that right? Okay, perfect. All right, very good. Thank you for that, that correction. Thank you, Ms. Fessley. All right, moving on to 4.5, approval of administrative appointment, Director of Federal Programs, beginning July 1st, 2023. Ms. Fessley, welcome back.
Well, good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the board. It's my pleasure to bring forth for the Director of Federal Programs, Mrs. Carrie Burns, coming to us from Dysart Unified School District. She has been in Dysart for many years, serving as principal for the past 11 years, and she's also served as assistant principal. She served also with the Arizona Department of Arizona Department of Education and the Roosevelt School District as a turnaround coach. She was an award-winning Rodale Exemplary Principal and has mentored new principals in her district on Title I grants, classroom needs assessments, effective PLC process, and using school-wide data to drive decisions and to support schools' continuous improvement cycle. She is well regarded and respected by her colleagues in Dysart, and we believe that she will bring a dynamic energy to the academic services support team that focuses on teaching and learning and student-centered, data-driven PLCs to support our tiered instruction. So at this time, I'm asking for your consideration and approval to approve Mrs. Carrie Burns as our next Director of Federal Programs.
All right, very good. We do not have any public comment tied to this line item. Mrs. Hill, questions, comments?
No comments at this time, thank you.
Mrs. Rooks?
No comments at this time, thank you.
Mrs. Ewing?
No comments, thank you.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a qualified individual. I don't have any comments either, so is she here?
She is. Do we want to take a vote first?
Sure, yeah, we can do that. All right, that said, no further questions, comments? Motion to approve the administrative appointment for the position of Director of Federal Programs as presented effective July 1st, 2023.
I will move to approve 4.5 for the approval of administrative appointment for the Director of Federal Programs beginning July 1st, 2023.
I'll second that. Ms. Concho, we have a motion made by Mrs. Hill, a second by myself. If you can run us through a voice vote, that'd be great, thanks.
President Sandoval,
Yay.
Mrs. Hill,
Aye.
Mrs. Rooks,
Aye.
Mrs. Ewing.
Yay.
All right, motion passes with 4 yeas and 1 absent or abstain. It's shown
I
abstain, should be
apologize.
absent.
That is my mistake. I will change that.
No worries. Either way, motion passes. Thank you, board members. All right, that completes our action items for this evening. We'll move.
President Sandoval.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse
Yes.
me. We
I
do
asked
have
for that
Mrs. Burns
earlier,
here
didn't I?
tonight. I would
Sorry
like
about
to
that.
bring her up and have the opportunity for you to meet her.
Thank you. Yes.
Mrs. Burns.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds. Community members, I have been a proud Peoria parent for many years, having a recent 2022 graduate and another in high school and another in an elementary school. So I've seen firsthand what it's like to be in Peoria with my kids, and I am really excited about joining this team. So thank you very much for this opportunity to serve the community.
Of course. Yeah, if you can hang tight just for a sec. Ms. Hill, questions, comments?
Well, welcome to the family. We're so glad to have you and your presence and all your wisdom and guidance in this area. And we just couldn't be more pleased to have you. Congratulations and welcome aboard.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Rooks?
Yes, welcome to Peoria Unified. And I definitely look forward to working with you. And yeah, so let's get to work.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooks. Mrs. Ewing?
Welcome and congratulations. I'm excited to have you on board, and once you're settled in, would love to sit down and talk to you about what some of your ideas are to bring this district forward. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, congratulations. It's always nice having individuals who step into a seat have some, I'm going to say, institutional knowledge, being a parent of the district, right? I'm not going to say that you're going to be able to just onboard very quickly and seamless, but it's good to have an understanding of the culture of the district, where it's headed, some of its opportunities, especially with this very critical position. So welcome and congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We'll now move on to 4.6, board comments. Mrs. Hill?
I guess no comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Rooks?
Yes. 1 Corinthians 16:13, stay awake, stand firm in your faith, be brave, be strong. I want to thank Cotton Bowl Elementary staff and students for the tour of their school last week. I was impressed with the teachers in the classrooms, including Miss Renby, who's an amazing social studies teacher at the school. Thank you to Peoria Elementary, the principal and assistant principal, for their tour of their school. I listened to their concerns about wanting to improve a few things and that they really wanted a new marquee sign. It was great to see the students excited to be at their school that day. Thank you to Miss Freeman and her class at Skyview Elementary for inviting me to read in their class last week. The kids and the teacher also gave me a clipboard with Dr. Seuss written on it, so that was pretty cute. I wanted to say congrats to our 2023 4A state champs Peoria High boys basketball team. That is a huge, great achievement for the students, the coaches, the staff, and the parents of the team. So congratulations to them. I also know that this week is School Safety Week, and I wanted to take a moment to praise a student at one of our schools for seeing something and doing something to report an incident about a teacher that did something wrong, and how that takes a lot of courage. And last, during my school board time, I have spent some time researching the initiative to bring, it appears, social workers into every school in the district. I researched a mental health grant from 2019 that this district has had for 3 years of funds awarded, with the district plan to bring a social worker into every school, along with social worker interns to talk to kids about their mental health. Come to find out through my research, the district in 2019 had surveyed children in SEL, which I don't remember myself as a parent ever being made aware of a survey by Panorama Education. In fact, I never knew of these plans in the district back in 2019, with a heavy push on social emotional learning and social workers in the district.
Ms. Rooks, I apologize. I hate to interrupt in the middle, but just point of order. I know each one of us has received an email from legal around discussing items that aren't on the agenda during board comments, and how by doing so goes against open meeting law. So I just, in fact, some of us has received it a couple times, both via email as well as, via, I guess, conversation with legal. So it's just, I mean, I'm also thinking of you as well, but I mean, I love the fact that the beginning of your public comments are about all the great things that are going on in the district in your visits, and that's awesome being in that engaged. But, commentary on items outside of what's on the agenda does go against open meeting laws, in addition to, look, I'm a man of faith as well. And, also a man of ethics and integrity. And we were also told that reciting scripture at a board meeting on this side of the dais, goes against the Establishment Clause as well. So we were directed by legal on this. So it is important that I bring it up.
We're with you.
So I just needed to make that comment. So it's, yeah, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please refrain
Hang tough, Heather,
from.
hang tough. She has a right to express her own opinion. Yes, she does.
Yes, yeah. And Mr. Puss is highlighted right there. Tell us to bring God back into our schools.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll let Melissa give her
I'm just
board
stating
comment.
what we were told.
Yeah, it's
So.
information related to service as board members is what I'm reading here. So
You were on the conversations as I was, or you were in the conversations as I was, so.
Okay, like Heather, have been out to a bunch of schools, so I wanted to thank those principals for the tours. I've been out to Desert Harbor, got a chance to talk about their phenomenal PAL teacher out there as well, and I was out at Desert Palms and spoke to their vice principal, got a great tour there, so thank you for that. At the Peoria High School, I was there too. I also got an opportunity to go to the DECA 2023 State Career Development Conference and got to see all of those students. It's a pretty phenomenal experience. We have a whole bunch of members going to nationals, so good luck to our students who are headed to that national competition. I also was invited to attend the Alternate Education Consortium that Ms. Jacobs presented on the best practices in the program. So that was great to hear about how that's the best practices in regards to student achievement. And thank you to Heather Wright and Eric Stone for inviting me to the Student of the Month Assembly at Park Ridge. Their value that they talked about this week was integrity. And then this afternoon, I got a chance to go to Copperwood Elementary for their tour there. And I also attended the Liberty High School choir concert. If you haven't been to see their concert, they have a phenomenal chamber choir concert. Josh Schaefer does an amazing job with those groups. And I also attended the Fun Fest that Marshall Ranch put on for their community. It was a great success, lots of families out there. And then at the end of this month, we do have coming up, it is the robotics contest, and I got to see a little bit of a sneak preview of that over at Cactus. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Yeah, I just have a few items, very similar to Mrs. Rooks and Mrs. Ewing around attending the patriotic speech. And, congratulations to the Peoria High School boys from Winton State, as well as the Sunrise Mountain High School girls from Winton State in basketball as well. Just the display of perseverance and teamwork and lifting each other up. I know Peoria was down at half, Sunrise Mountain was down at half and still came back and were victorious. So great job to both of those teams. Read Across America is always a joy to go and read to our young scholars in the classroom. And on the heels of CTE month, it was great to see some of the work that our CTE students do here at the district office. So a lot of great things going on across the district. But thank you, board members, for your engagement throughout our sites. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I would be remiss if I didn't at least give a shout out to Skyview Elementary. They did invite me to come out for reading week, and I was able to read to the second grade class, Mrs. Reyes' second grade class. So thank you all so much for having me at Skyview. It was a wonderful experience. Reading week is just such a great thing, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of that with our kids.
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. All right. Superintendent comments. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you, President Sandoval, Governing Board, Cabinet, and guests this week. Ms. Kristen Baltus, the principal of both both the Canyon Elementary School and the Sunflower Center accepted an Excellence in Education Award from the House Education Committee for the exceptional work in supporting medically fragile students and ensuring that all their needs are met. She and her team are very deserving of this recognition, and we also appreciate all they do to support our students. 4 students from the Peoria High School's Air Force Junior ROTC team will compete in the 2022-2023 JROTC Leadership and Academic Bowl in Washington, D.C. in June. They recently advanced through 2 intense phases of an online competition, which tested them on their knowledge of core curriculum in math, science, and language arts, as well as current events, citizenship, leadership skills, and financial literacy. We wish them the best of luck as they advance through their competition. I would also like to congratulate Lake Pleasant and Sunset Heights Elementary School. Both schools had teams of students participate this weekend's Regional Odyssey of the Mind competition. If you are unfamiliar with Odyssey of the Mind, it is an after-school club which promotes critical thinking and creative problem-solving skills for students in a competitive environment. Lake Pleasant and Sunset Heights have teams that are advancing to the state competition in Tucson on April 1st, and again, we wish them the very best of luck. I also want to recognize our Sunrise Mountain High School girls basketball team and our Peoria High School boys basketball team. As you mentioned earlier, both teams won the state championship last week. So a big congratulations to the student athletes, their coaches, the parents who support them, and their schools. It's a wonderful accomplishment for both of them. Congratulations to Raymond S. Kellis student Lemieux Wesley. She received a full ride scholarship to Johns Hopkins University, and we are incredibly proud of her. We're looking forward to hearing more about our 2023 graduates in the weeks to come as our guidance counselors track their scholarships and future plans, and we could not be more thrilled to hear the additional inspiring stories like this one that will come to us over the next few weeks and months. Something also happened last week at one of our schools that reminded me that although our main purpose as public schools is to educate our youth, our staff do so much more to support our students and their families. Last week, one of our social workers and a teacher identified that one of our students was struggling with homelessness. They worked alongside our McKinney-Vento liaison to find housing and ensure that the student and the family's needs were being met. The Peoria Education Foundation then stepped in and they came forward to fund some temporary housing until other services could come in and help. This is School Social Worker Week, and I want to say thank you for helping to ensure our students have a safe and welcoming learning environment to come to each day. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. All right, moving on to, looks like section 5, public comment. 5.1, request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. We do have a few items here. As always, we'll spend 30 minutes on call to the public, 3 minutes per individual. We may have some new faces in here at the moment, so I'll read our public rules of conduct. The board president shall keep control of the meeting and require the speakers and the audience to refrain from abusive or profane remarks, disruptive outbursts, applause, protests, or other conduct which disrupts or interferes with the orderly conduct of the business of the meeting. Personal attacks on board members, staff, or members of the public are not allowed. It is inappropriate to utilize a public hearing, the public comment segment, or any other agenda items for the purpose of making political speeches. Engaging in such conduct and failing to cease such conduct upon request of the presiding officer will be grounds for ending a speaker's time at the podium or for the removal of any disruptive person from the meeting room at the direction of the board president. That said, our first public comment comes from Kristen McAfee. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. My name is Kristen McAfee, and this has been a true odyssey of the mind, this meeting. So first off, I want to congratulate you all for winning the state championship in 3 sports, right? Amazing. And And when I walked in, I could just feel the specialness in the room, right? And I still feel it despite the, setbacks. I think this is a great school district. I've watched the community step up and express their opinions, the board. I had a great experience with the CTO. Despite the toughness, right, it's about having the champion mindset, right, which you all have displayed on the, in several different sports, but now we just have to bring it together as a community, right? And so one example of that is McDonald's, right? So at one point, Ray Kroc was struggling with McDonald's, and he was in the bank, and he needed more money. And in fact, he owed him money. And they was like, we're not going to give you a loan. You owe us right now. In fact, you need to do better on your loan with us. So a guy overheard him, and he sat down with him, and he said, hey, I don't know why you're struggling, because McDonald's, has a lot of customers. And then he told him, the problem is you think you're in the burger business, right? And you're actually in the real estate business. Right, and that's powerful, right? Now McDonald's owns billions of land all across the world. So when I listen to the problems here, right, that's what I want to tell you all. We are in the real estate business, right, which includes, right, having the right books, right? So I wrote a book, Superintendents Take the Best Selfies, right? So the point of it is we got to prepare our next superintendent, right, because we want to be able to address problems and lift them up. And then on the opposite end, even for the superintendent now, when you're going through tough times, it's about remembering that you have to, connect with the community. And then when I look at the marketing, you all have an amazing story, right? State champions. And the key, so I've got millions of views. So my point is I like to help with the books, the content. And how do you take content and connect with people 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now? Just like a marriage, right? So that's what I want to be able to help with. And you all have a great business model, right? Let's say, each kid is worth $10,000, right? But more importantly, they're worth more than that. It's their minds and souls we helping them with. So, I like to help in any area I can. But I'm confident you all will be champions through this.
Thank you, Mr. McAfee. Next public comment comes from Ms. Trina Berg.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board. My name is Trina Berg. I'm a parent in the district. I'm also a teacher. I wanted to, first off, let everyone know that this is Social Worker Week. We didn't recognize Social Worker Week like we did School Counselor Week. And I think having school social workers has been incredibly important. I know we have one on our campus, and they're amazing. And our students seek that person out as a person to talk to. And I don't think we celebrate our social workers enough. And in fact, I think we need to expand and have more of them around, because the resources they bring to our campus are just, they're not measurable. So I just wanted to give a big thank you to all of our social workers that we have in this district. And I really hope that eventually we can, in fact, bring in more. I actually wanted to talk about a couple other things tonight, but this board meeting has been something else. President Sandoval, with all due respect, I hope we can do this better. The outbursts are not appropriate. They're not appropriate from anybody. We are adults, and your thoughts and your feelings are great, but you don't have to be shouting at anybody. We are supposed to be role models for our students and for our children, and we should not be yelling at each other or over each other or calling each other names or whatever. It's not appropriate. It was mentioned that we expect our teachers to be above and beyond, and I don't disagree with that. I've sat in a lot of different meetings with teachers for different things. And I think one of the things we have to remember is we do actually have a process in this district, and if you don't like the process, we have policy, and you pass policy. This is not the place to try and run policy. That's not the reason for a board meeting. So again, we need to do better. But also, if you expect us to be better and to do better, then you also need to do better. And we have board members, and as a board member, you should not be out there very vocally bashing our district and bashing our teachers and calling for people to come in here to do the same, because this is not the place for that. We have policy. And as someone who's been through this before with some of you, just because someone isn't fired doesn't mean nothing happened to them. Our HR files are our personal files, and they are not open to you, and you should not be just assuming that nothing happened because it wasn't the outcome that you wanted. And as far as, appointing people, I've been in the process to appoint people, to promote them to different positions in this district. It is an intense, intense process. There are a lot of people who have a direct say in that process, and we get to vote, and it is us. And the fact that the board just dismissed that entire process is disheartening. There might be people who don't like the person who's being promoted. I can guarantee you, it doesn't matter who this person is in the district, you are going to find people who don't like them. Every time we promote someone, you're going to find people who don't like that person. It's just kind of the way it is. We deal with 36,000 people. But it's disheartening that you completely dismissed all of the work of our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bard. Next public comment comes from Ms. Laura Tepason.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, and guests. To be continued from last time. Feedback also. Courageous and meaningful feedback requires getting to the heart of issues with heart and using appropriate vulnerability skills. Lead with courage and heart, and be prepared to give and receive daring feedback. This is how you build a culture of trust, curiosity, positive intent, and self-awareness, a culture that thrives. My feedback to you today, to you and the community, pertains to public rules of conduct. While claiming to be under God and indivisible, you and the community need a major reset and willingness to drop the double standard or political games at times. It looks awkward and disconnected when amplifying an issue rather than seeking solutions. And the public rules of conduct or board members' comments, God or Bible verses, have not been added to the list of what the public or board members cannot say, namely profane, vulgar, sexual topics, attacks, disrespectful remarks. If we agree to be respectful to each other, we also have to take into consideration fully, not partially, that diversity and inclusion pertains to all. Since our diversity is so diverse and inclusion is actually beyond me, sharing information about our sexual orientation here on this platform is quite disrespectful, and it also must be stopped, as the attacks on all the board members. Last time I checked, no to disrespectful remarks has not been removed, correct? Sharing private information about gender-based, who is straight, who is gay, who is trans, who is furry, automatically takes us to the private bedroom intimacy. It has nothing to do with the board meetings. If anyone discriminates against anyone on basis of sex, religion, gender, so on and so forth, it must be addressed at that particular school first, and then so on. It is all about respect and process. It's disturbing news to hear about some teachers because the district is amazing. But if we have a couple of teachers, it's sufficient for you to consider a revising of your process. Have a process with more severe consequences, so this disturbing language in classroom is not allowed. Send a strong message that these people are not welcome in the classrooms. Be brave and lean into difficult conversation and decisions. You will struggle, you will fail, but if you are clear about the values that guide you in your efforts to show up here and be seen, you will always be able to find the light. You will know what it means to live brave and make the best non-partisan, rather logical decisions. Freedom and equality for all, not just the ones who you agree with. And solutions are not conveniently reached by taking from some to give to others. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Tepason. Next public comment comes from, Carrie Kane.
Members of the board, I'm not ready for formality, so I'm just going to talk. My name is Carrie Kane. Just 15 seconds, my own personal background. I'm a parent of 2 boys that grew up in the Peoria School District, graduated from Centennial High School. I'm also a local hiring leader. I've worked at American Express and USAA. I own my own IT consulting business. And I'm very, very proud to be a volunteer, a very active volunteer. There's one young man that I've helped in the corner there, Tanner. I'm very proud of Tanner. You guys talk a lot about sports activities, and I love that. I'll guarantee you, I'll bet anybody I've been to more PUSD sporting activities than anyone in this room. Love sports, but I also would love to hear more about other activities as well. And you guys do a great job of making sure that you talk about DECA and FBLA. I can tell you I'm a volunteer judge at FBLA. Of course, I've taken the last couple of years off. And the Peoria School District always has exceptional students. And quite frankly, if they actually rated them as state champions, you know, Centennial, Ironwood, Liberty, all of the schools do exceptionally well at future business leader activities to a degree where I think you'd just be absolutely shocked to see what some of these students do. Tanner, for example, personally started esports, which is a new activity in Peoria School District. Actually organized the first event between Sunrise and Kellis and did that at GCU. Did a fantastic job at organizing it. So Tanner will be a future business leader in this community very, very soon. But really what I wanted to say tonight is Tuesday, 30 minutes after noon, I lost my beautiful wife, Dixie Kane, to lung cancer. And Dixie obviously had been a huge part of this activity. She's a tireless advocate for everyone, and especially students. She grew up in Winslow. She's an absolute Winslow bulldog at supporting and defending students. There was one moment where she and I went into the stands because there was one young man that was being made fun of at an away game in Tucson. He was a male color guard, and he was being made fun of, and I was not going to stand for that. So Dixie went with me, and we had a discussion with the opposing side, and we got it resolved. And what I'd say to this board and to this group is this. I feel like this does not feel like the family that we want Peoria School District to be. If you look at 2 chapters ago, 2 meetings ago, there was a fantastic display of Peoria School District family. That's what we want. And this is not it yet.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Next public comment comes from Alicia Lucas.
Good evening, board members. My name is Alicia Lucas. I am a former PUSD employee, and I originally had intended to come tonight just to set the tone for the Title IX discussion, because I know that during this discussion we have students, faculty, potentially staff, and I wanted to make sure that everybody, not necessarily only at the board level, but beyond the board level at home, on the internet, keeps those identities of those folks safe, not revealing any type of information that could potentially identify them, because I know that these folks are vulnerable, and especially recently with some of the anti-LGBTQ graffiti at one of the campuses in Peoria. I feel that the tension in this topic, it needed to be made out as a point. But after hearing the comments earlier, I kind of think we need to talk a little bit about maintaining people's privacy and also respecting them in not only the online forum, but also within the board meeting. I feel that there are protocols in place and due process for complaints against teachers, and bringing them up at a board meeting with specific claims that can't be defended. Basically online and in this type of forum, that information is out there and is damaging no matter what comes forth in a due process setting that you would have, which is part of the district protocol when someone has a complaint lodged against them. So my concerns are for not only the people who are working here now, because this is definitely, when they see teachers, coworkers being blasted at meetings, being blasted on the internet, it sends a chilling message to them. And they reconsider, are they going to want to stay in a district where this type of behavior goes on? I left the district. I know that you guys are reaching out to teachers to see why they left, and mostly it was due to COVID reasons, but I also knew that there was a increased tension in our district. And I know that when people come to look for a place to work or to sign their contracts for the following year, that having an atmosphere where they're blasted at board meetings and blasted on the internet doesn't make Peoria an attractive choice. And we're in a situation right now where teacher shortage is at a crisis level. So I'd like you to keep that in mind, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Lucas. Next public comment comes from Ms. Corrine Haynes.
President Sandoval and the board. I was just looking at a grant recently and didn't realize how many hundreds of grants I guess are out there. But this particular one I was looking at was the Arizona School Safety and Social Wellness Grant that emphasized safety and SROs as its top priority. It then went on to list other positions such as a juvenile probation officer, school counselors, and social workers. I'm going to share with you just briefly my experiences as a teacher in a school that was spread out, so it was really hard to protect it from any intruders that might want to do our kids harm. And we would go through our practice lockdowns, and my art room happened to be located in the library and technology building. And so it was hard to contain, but when it came time for a lockdown drill, it was my job to get all my kids lined up against the wall, away from the windows, then leave my room to lock the main doors coming into the building, come back, lock my door, cover the windows, and then shut the shades in 3 of the windows there. Hopefully things have changed since then. This has been a few years ago. And then I'd get back with my kids, and they'd look at me, and they go, Mrs. Haynes, aren't we just sitting ducks? And the answer was yes. Yes, they were. It was kind of a crazy lockdown policy, but that's what we did. And those kids knew that the only protection they had was me if I was armed. If not, there was no protection. The second best was having an armed SOR on our campus. And that's what I'm saying and asking you to think about right now. With all of the grants and the money out there, we should be able to have an SRO on every campus. And at our high schools where they're really overcrowded, say for example like Liberty, you probably need 2, one who can be inside, one on the outside. Not only for what the worst that we could think could happen, but for all the incidences that I'm hearing going on in schools, that this would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Next public comment comes from Jennifer C.
Good evening, President Sandoval, board, Dr. Reynolds, cabinet, and guests. I hold my master's in Christian studies, my undergraduate as well. And as a parent with my educational and professional background, I felt the need to respond to a couple of comments that were made last board meeting. And I quote, "We have kids who are really struggling in school. You have kids that are socially having issues, who are emotionally going through a lot. Our world is a mess. We live in a broken world. It's a disaster. I kind of know how to fix everything, but that's a whole other story. You take God out of it, and this is what you get. It's kind of too bad, but that's where we are at, and it starts in the home too. It's really tough. We just keep putting the wrong resources in, And I think we are pointing kids in the wrong direction. That's my personal belief. That's my faith speaking. That's why they're depressed. They don't have hope, and we only have one true hope. This is a tricky thing because giving more money to this isn't really going to fix this problem, and having more social workers isn't going to fix this problem. It's a bigger problem, end quote. The spectrum of struggles our kids have in our community vary, and I believe it's a disservice to paint with such broad brushes. Depression, anxiety, social struggles, learning disabilities, and just about every other problem exist in Christian homes and homes of other faiths as well. In Luke 13, Jesus is teaching in a synagogue, and a crippled woman comes up to him, and Jesus reaches out and he heals her. And the leader of the synagogue loses his mind. He becomes indignant, it says. He says, "You healed her on the Sabbath. There's 6 other days. Go and do it then." And Jesus says, "You hypocrites. This is a daughter of Abraham. Doesn't she deserve to be delivered even on the Sabbath?" Throughout the Gospels, we see Jesus partner with people to heal and eventually empowers his people to heal. Social workers may not be the fix that you want God to do or that you think he's going to carry out to touch our kids' lives, but the religious leaders in the scriptures didn't expect Jesus to heal on the Sabbath either. There are many parents who are praising God for the social workers on our campus, for the support that they offer our kids when we cannot be there. The work they do is good, and our children deserve the support they offer because they too are created in the image of God. And this resource is good for our children who need the support. As another member quoted last week, train up your children the way we should go. That verse is talking about supporting our kids like you support a young tree until it can grow on its own. And we have that responsibility as a community.
Thank you, Mrs. C. All right, final public comment comes from Ms. Marcy Robb.
Good evening. I started out tonight to talk about something totally different, but I've been here 33 years. I love my job. I am so disheartened and so disappointed in our board tonight for many reasons. You know the candidates that are being promoted. You are aware of those names. Just like you expect me as a teacher to be in the classroom and do my job and be prepared, I would expect you to know the names of the people that are getting promoted or going for promotion and to do something with that information. Look them up. Find out how they've done. But you've now taken someone who I have not worked with other than 2 times personally. I have not heard one single thing that has not been amazing about Ms. Garcia. And you now have taken this and kind of thrown away her job promotion because someone came up and spoke something that may or may not have been true. And I'm not discounting anything that that parent was saying, but we do have a process, and we are supposed to take care of that within and figure out what the discipline needs to be. You should have done your homework on these people that are being promoted instead of taking the word of someone without having known any background, and now you've shut that down. And that's how I feel about that. I'm saddened every single night I come to these board meetings and I see this kind of stuff happening. We all are fighting for the same thing. We want our kids to be productive and happy and healthy and doing well in school. And when we argue and when we bicker about someone who we have a process to vet, and we listen to someone's negativity, true or untrue, and we don't do our research, but we make a decision based on the spur of the moment thing that we heard, that makes me sad. Please do your homework. Please look at what we're asking you to do. Please look at the policy. There are parents that are asking you to look at the teachers or to look at the classroom things that are going on or the curriculum. Look at those things, take it to heart, and please email people back, because I have emailed a couple of you and gotten no response. And I'm just asking you to please listen. That's what I feel your job is to be. You are to help us to do our job better, not to make decisions for everybody, because you are up at the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Robb, for your time. All right, that concludes this evening's call to the public segment. Dr. Reynolds, the cabinet, as always, if you could please get with those individuals who spoke during this segment to listen and be a solution. Thank you. All right, we are moving on to section 9, discussion items. 9.1, legal presentation on Title IX as it relates to use of school restrooms. Just a little background, this presentation is intended to inform the board and the public regarding the current state of the law, but not to address questions regarding specific students, issues, or policy options. Lisa Ann, good evening, welcome.
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you for having me here tonight. As you indicated, I have a presentation that is just basically the status of the law. It's a little bit of a law school class for you. I hope you don't find it too technical or boring, but we'll go, and it's not a super straightforward issue, and so I'm going to kind of start at the beginning and go through it. So if you could, there we go. There's really two issues that the legal issue, well, two primary legal issues that come into play with regard to Title IX and with regard to the use of bathrooms by transgender students and policies around that. Obviously, the first is Title IX. That's in the topic of this agenda item. Title IX is part of the Education Amendments of 1972, and it just very generally states that no person on the basis of sex shall be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance, which of course includes this school district and all public school districts. It's, like I said, it's a very general statute. It applies, it was kind of first came to be known by people in the context of athletics and requiring equality in athletics, but it really pertains to any kind of sex discrimination and actually also sexual harassment in the context of public schools. The other law that comes into play in all of these cases is the Equal Protection Clause. And the Equal Protection Clause is part of the United States Constitution. And it says that no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So it's basically a general anti-discrimination provision. And there are different kinds of discrimination, and we're going to be talking tonight about sex discrimination. And the Supreme Court's, basically the law that's developed by the courts says that when you're talking about sex-based discrimination under the Equal Protection Clause, it's subjected to what's called intermediate scrutiny. And that's kind of technical, like there's some kinds of discrimination, such as discrimination on the basis of race, which is subjected to strict scrutiny. And there's other kinds of discrimination. I don't know if you had something like discrimination on the basis of hair color or some kind of not protected category, it would be just a rational basis test. So intermediate scrutiny is in between, because the court recognizes that there are times when sex-based classifications make sense, and so it's different than race-based classifications. And so the test of intermediate scrutiny is that when something is a law or an act by the government discriminates on the basis of sex, in order to satisfy that standard of intermediate scrutiny, it has to advance an important government interest and be substantially related to that objective. And we're going to see that that's what comes up in the cases that talk about bathroom policies. So there is no law that says what a kind of bathroom policy a school district may or must have. There's nothing that says that specifically. And there's no law from the United States Supreme Court that says that. What there is there's a split in the federal circuits. And so this is that little law school piece. Some of you may already know this, so I apologize. The federal court system is divided into regions that are called circuits, and there are 12 of them. And we are in the 9th Circuit. And then underneath the circuit courts of appeal are the district courts. So the district courts in Arizona are the federal courts here, and they're in the 9th Circuit. Authority from different circuits isn't binding in other circuits. So if the 11th Circuit decides something and the 3rd Circuit decides something else, the courts in the 3rd Circuit have to follow what the 3rd Circuit Court of Appeals said, and the courts in the 11th Circuit have to follow what the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals said. Only when the Supreme Court weighs in and says this is what the law is there something that every court has to follow. So when there's no law in a circuit, then the circuit courts will look to law from other circuits to inform them and help them make a decision. But when there is law in a particular circuit, then that's the law of the land there unless and until the Supreme Court comes in and changes that. And like I said, that hasn't happened on this issue. So there's a split in the federal circuit courts, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So until recently, there's a case from December 2022, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but chronologically, before that, there were 4 circuit courts that had addressed the issue of bathrooms and transgender students. And all 4 of those courts had sided with the transgender students. But there's a difference in the way the cases came to the courts that I think is important to note. So in the 7th Circuit, which is the first case that's listed on there, and in the 4th Circuit, what happened was transgender students challenged bathroom policies that did not allow them to use the bathroom that was associated with their gender identity. In other words, they divided, their bathroom policy was you have to use the bathroom that is based on your sex at birth, your biological sex. And in those 2 cases, transgender students challenged those laws, and in both of those cases, the court said that is a violation of equal protection, that is a violation of Title IX. The transgender student must be allowed to use the bathroom that identifies with which they identify, their gender identity. So that's 2 cases, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Grimm in a minute because I'm going to talk about the arguments, but I just want the overview. The other 2 cases, and one of them is the 9th Circuit case, and it's the only 9th Circuit case on the issue. Those 2 cases also side essentially with the transgender students, but it's a different context because in those cases, the school districts passed policies that allowed students to use the bathroom, I'm just going to say of their choice, the choice that corresponds with their gender identity. And the challenge was brought by non-transgender students, or what is referred to as cisgender students. The cisgender students brought the lawsuit saying, this policy violates my rights to not have a trans person in my bathroom. And in the 3rd Circuit and in the 9th Circuit, both courts rejected that idea. And both courts said cisgender students do not have a right to make sure that there are no transgender students in their bathroom. So it's a little different, right? Because some cases say that transgender students have a right to use the bathroom they want to, and the other cases say cisgender students don't have a right to know that there won't be transgender students in their bathroom. So it's a little bit of a different in the way the issue is framed to the court. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the 9th Circuit case because, again, that's our circuit, and that is the law that courts here would have to follow. In that case, the school district adopted a policy that allowed transgender students to use the bathroom that matched their gender identity. The plaintiffs in the lawsuit are cisgender students and their parents who are bringing an action for injunctive relief, saying that that policy violates the Due Process Clause of the U.S. Constitution, Title IX, and the First Amendment's Free Exercise Clause, which is free exercise of religion. So the court went through each of those arguments, and it said, with regard to the right to privacy argument, the court said that the right to privacy does not extend to avoiding all risk of intimate exposure to or by a transgender person. In other words, the cisgender students did not have a right to be sure that no transgender students would use their bathroom. And then the court also looked at the argument, also under the 14th Amendment, that the parents had the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their own children. And the court said that the right of parents to make decisions regarding the care and custody and control of their children doesn't extend to the right to dictate what a school district's bathroom policies would be. Can you keep going? The parents also claimed that the law violated Title IX, and specifically what they claimed was that it violated the cisgender students' right to be free from unwelcome sexual harassment. Because like I told you, Title IX also governs sexual harassment. The court said that having a transgender student in your bathroom is not harassment. It does not qualify as harassment under Title IX, which requires conduct that is severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive, and that mere presence of a transgender student in the bathroom, according to the court, is not sufficient to constitute sexual harassment. And there was no allegation that they were actually being harassed physically or verbally or anything along those lines. Okay, next one. And there's one more argument that the Ninth Circuit looked at, and that was the free exercise clause. Like I said, that's the right for every person to exercise their religion. And the court said that having a policy that allows transgender students to use the bathroom of their choice is a neutral policy. It's generally applicable. It's rationally related to a government interest, and it doesn't target people because of their religion or restrict their ability to follow their religion or their own religious dictates. And so the court rejects all of the arguments that the plaintiffs brought, and like I said here on the slide, the takeaway is that in the Ninth Circuit, cisgender students do not have the right to exclude transgender students from using the bathroom based on their gender identity. Okay, the next case I want to talk about is not a Ninth Circuit case, but I'll explain in a little while why I'm going to talk about it. And that case is Grimm versus Gloucester County, which is a Fourth Circuit case, and it's the most recent of the four, it's the most recent of the three that aren't Ninth Circuit cases, and that's why I'm going to mention it. In this case, the school district's policy did require students to use the bathroom that related to their biological sex, and a male transgender student brought a claim for discrimination. Here, the court held that this policy, it violated the Equal Protection Clause and also Title IX. So with regard to the Equal Protection Clause, what the court held was that separating students based on biological sex it's sex discrimination, and it doesn't pass that intermediate scrutiny test that I told you about because the policy was not substantially related to the important interest in protecting student privacy. The court agreed that there is an interest in protecting student privacy, but it said that a transgender child in that bathroom is going to use a private stall. The school had installed privacy screens in the bathroom, and there was no evidence that the transgender students were any more likely to invade the privacy of other students than other students in the same bathroom would be. And so the court rejected, the court said that the plaintiff was being discriminated against on the basis of sex in a way that was unconstitutional. Sorry, can you go back one more time? The court also considered the Title IX claim, and the court said that the school because the school can't exclude the student from the bathroom without considering their biological sex, then the policy is discriminating on the basis of sex, and also found that it was a violation of Title IX. Okay, so that's that case. The school district, which had lost because its policy was overturned by this statute, appealed to or filed a petition for cert to the Supreme Court. So everyone has a right, when you have a district court decision, to appeal to the circuit court. Circuit court has to take it and consider it, but you don't have a right to go to the Supreme Court. You have to ask the Supreme Court through a petition for certiorari, please review this case. And people thought, well, this is an opportunity that the Supreme Court is going to weigh in and we're going to have some clear law, but the court denied it without comment. Most people think that the reason why they denied it was because there was no split in the circuit at this time. All the circuits that had ruled the same way, which was in favor of the transgender students. But I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. They just denied it. No Supreme Court ruling. So then the very most recent case is Adams versus School Board of St. Johns County, or of Johns County, and this came out of Florida. And this is, like I said, the most recent case. It's just from this past November. And the 11th Circuit, in this case, breaks with the other 4 circuits that have considered the case. And they rule, so in this case, again, the school district has a policy requiring students to use the bathroom that's associated with their biological sex. And a transgender student challenged the policy. And the 11th Circuit Court ruled against the transgender student and in favor of the school district's policy. It said that that policy, so go on actually. The two laws that the court reviewed are the exact same 2 laws that were reviewed in the Grimm case, the Equal Protection Clause and Title IX. And here, the 11th Circuit said that the policy did pass the intermediate scrutiny test. It didn't violate equal protection because the policy advanced the government objective of protecting students' privacy in school bathrooms, and it did so in a manner that was substantially related to that objective. And the court also said that the policy did not violate Title IX because Title IX's implementing regulations specifically allow schools to provide separate bathrooms on the basis of sex. And I just put a note there. In the 9th Circuit, again, this is, remember, looking at it from the opposite point of view, but in the 9th Circuit, that argument was raised almost like, well, Title IX requires you to sex segregate bathrooms, and the 9th Circuit said, well, just because Title IX authorizes sex segregated bathrooms doesn't mean that they're required, and also the 9th Circuit said, plus gender identity is a different thing, but it's not really addressed because of the fact that, like I said, it's coming at it from a different point of view. So, let's pause there for 1 second. The decisions in the 11th Circuit and the other circuits, and specifically I'll just talk about the 4th Circuit case since those are the 2 most recent ones, they can't be reconciled. They both applied the same test, intermediate scrutiny. They both agreed that they were looking at sex discrimination, and they both agreed what the test was. Is it substantially related to protecting an important governmental interest? And in Grimm, the court said it is not substantially related. The policy is not substantially related to the important interest of privacy. And in Adams, the court said it is substantially related to the interest of policy. They just disagree about the way the law applies to these facts. There's no common ground for them to find because they just find it's different things. And this is where sometimes a case like this will get to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court will decide. Neither of those cases is authority in the 9th Circuit. But I think that what we can take from looking at those cases and looking at Barr, the 9th Circuit case that I just talked about, in the 9th Circuit case, they rejected the idea that there's a fundamental right to privacy related to the use of bathrooms. So that doesn't tell us exactly what the 9th Circuit would say, but I think it's an indication of how the 9th Circuit feels about that. And then the other thing, which I haven't mentioned yet, but in Grimm, the 4th Circuit case, the court talked about sex discrimination, but it also explicitly looked at discrimination against transgender students. Now, transgender has not been a category that we looked at as a potential of discrimination for nearly as long as sex or race or things like that. But there's a body of law also that where courts can decide when something is what the courts call a quasi-suspect class. Okay, so race is a suspect class, and religion and sex are quasi-suspect class. So there's different standards for discrimination. A quasi-suspect class is also entitled to intermediate scrutiny if there's something that's discriminating on the basis of that. So in Grimm, the 4th Circuit case, the court said that not only is the policy sex discrimination, but it's also discrimination against transgender students, and it said transgender students are a quasi-suspect class. Well, transgender people are a quasi-suspect class. And so that's separate and apart from whether or not it discriminates on the basis of sex. There's a separate claim for discrimination there that would have to pass that same test. The Adams Court in Florida didn't consider that question because it wasn't raised. Courts only consider what's raised before them. And there's a footnote in that decision that just says this wasn't raised and we're not considering it. The Ninth Circuit has also ruled, not in the context of bathrooms, in a different context, but once it's done, it's done. The Ninth Circuit has ruled that transgender is a quasi-suspect class. So again, that doesn't, it's not, there's not the direct Ninth Circuit precedent here, but those are some important facts to think about in how the Ninth Circuit would potentially look at these issues. Okay, so I want to talk about a couple of other developments because if you're following this debate, which it seems like a lot of you are, you probably are familiar with some of this. So let me go on and talk about a couple of other things. Next slide. There was a case in 2020 in which the United States Supreme Court ruled that Title VII's prohibition on discrimination based on sex also prohibited discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. This is a case that is completely different, and it's a different law, and it's a different context, but it's been looked at, and so I want to mention it. The Supreme Court said that an employer cannot, if an employer fires someone for being transgender or for being gay, then the employer is discriminating against that person on the basis of sex, because they're discriminating against them because they don't follow the expectations that culture imposes on their sex. Failure to correspond with sort of the sexual role that's defined in this culture. So the Supreme Court of the United States says that it is discrimination, it's sex-based discrimination if you discriminate on the basis of gender identity. So some people have said, oh, well, that means it's also sex discrimination, that clearly the Supreme Court would agree that it's sex discrimination in the context of Title IX or other things. But the Supreme Court actually says, right in the case, this isn't a decision about bathrooms, locker rooms, or anything else. This is a decision that you can't fire people for being transgender or being gay. After this came out, however, the President Biden issued an executive order. And if you can move on. And he issued an executive order extending the holding in that Bostock case to other things, Title IX, the Fair Housing Act, and the Immigration and Nationality Act. And I mean, he said some other things based on principles reflected in the Constitution, the policy that every person should be treated with respect and dignity, should be able to live without fear, and specifically, he said in the executive order, children should be able to learn without worrying about whether they'll be denied access to the restroom, locker room, or school sports. So the executive order, which isn't the same as law, identifies discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity as a violation of Title IX. So then what happens is 3 federal agencies respond to that executive order, and they say, okay, you know, we're going to roll with that, basically. The Department of Justice and the Department of Education both say Title VII prohibits sex discrimination, and the Supreme Court says that includes gender identity discrimination, and Title IX prohibits sex discrimination, and so it must also prohibit gender identity discrimination. And the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which works in the employment context, also said, okay, employers should apply Bostock to mean that transgender people should have rights related to their gender, including with bathrooms and things like that. So that's, again, that's guidance from federal agencies. But federal agencies are allowed to make guidance, but they don't have unlimited authority to make guidance. And so if you go to the next slide, after they did this, there's a lawsuit challenging that guidance. And that case, Arizona was one of the plaintiffs. There were several states, and they brought the action in Tennessee. And what they argued was that those 3 federal agencies didn't have the authority to make those rules. Because if the Supreme Court had made, if they were just implementing the Supreme Court's decision in Bostock, that would be something that they could do. They could provide that guidance. But what the court said is that the guidance goes beyond the Supreme Court, and so it's really rulemaking. And agencies can make rules, but there's a whole process they have to follow when they make rules. They have to publish draft rules, they have to get public comment for months and months, they have to consider public comment, and then they can adopt rules. And they didn't go through any of that. They just said, you know, here's our new direction. And so the court in this Tennessee case put all of that guidance on hold. Said, hey, you can't enforce this guidance. It's on hold, and nothing more has happened with that. So that's just still sitting out there. That's on hold. And so that doesn't really change anything, really, because it basically just says that guidance can't be followed, but it doesn't tell us anything clearer about what the law actually says, okay? And I think there's one more slide. So Bostock, like I said, is national law that applies to everyone, but it's not, I mean, so far that does not apply to use of bathrooms by adults, and it doesn't apply to students or Title IX. Circuit courts have reached different conclusions about the issue, and so the Ninth Circuit case only makes it clear that cisgender students don't have a constitutional right to bathrooms that exclude transgender students, but it has not ruled on whether or not transgender students have a right to use a bathroom that corresponds with their gender identity. It just hasn't ruled on that at all. And that is the end of my presentation.
Lisa Ann, thank you. We do have public comment tied to this line item, so we're going to go through that, and then we'll call you back up at that point. Okay. All right. We have quite a few public comment tied to this line item. We'll try to get through all, and we'll spend 30 minutes again on this line item, and 3 minutes per speaker. I'm not going to read the public rules of conduct again. I just want to reiterate that please refrain from using names or students or situations. This conversation is really just about the current state of the law, so thank you for that. All right. That said, first public comment comes from Wendy Rose.
Hello, I'm Wendy, and I'm the mother of 3 teenage daughters. A 2022 PUSD graduate, a junior, and a sophomore. I believe that all PUSD students should be protected, including those who require bathroom accommodations for gender dysphoria, which is a medical diagnosis. In order to meet the needs for these students, their parents and guardians should submit medical documentation of an assigned diagnosis, and a 504 plan should be implemented to provide reasonable accommodations for them. It is important to note that the burden of providing accommodations rests on that of the district and the school. It does not rest on the shoulders of other students. It is not the student's responsibility to provide the accommodation for another student's 504 plan. Therefore, PUSD students should not be expected to share bathrooms and locker rooms with students of the opposite biologic sex, if that is an accommodation under a 504 plan. Now, I do have experience with 504 plans as both a parent and a professional. One of my daughters received 504 accommodations starting in preschool for a chronic medical diagnosis. At no time were other students asked or expected to provide the accommodations for her. The same standard should apply for students requiring bathroom accommodations for gender dysphoria. As such, gender-neutral private bathrooms should be provided for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment comes from Miss Wendy Van Wee.
I'm actually speaking on behalf of a community member that was not able to be here, so I'm going to read you her statement. President Sandoval, members of the board, and Dr. Reynolds. My comments are about Title IX issues in PUSD, but first I want to address remarks directed at Board Clerk Heather Rooks. Calling her out for negativity and telling us to focus on the positives in district is like saying, I know my neighbor beats his wife, but let's focus on how they throw the best pool parties. If you think that sounds ridiculous, think about how your speeches and board comments sound every meeting. If this district acted with integrity and told parents the truth, Heather wouldn't stand out as much. We're proud of the academic and athletic achievements in PUSD. We always take the time to publicly recognize them, but this doesn't offset boys accessing girls' spaces on campus. I'm not present to ask the lawyer questions, but I hope she's forthcoming. I also hope the superintendent and board president are done apologizing and they're ready to take action to protect all students. As for the adult men advocating for genderless bathrooms, take a moment to think of your wife, your mother, or your daughter encountering a man in a closed space. You likely imagined a scenario where your loved one made it out safely. Now imagine they're sexually assaulted, and when they find the courage to tell you, what do you say, knowing you had the power to prevent the assault from happening? At least 2 girls in Loudoun County didn't safely make it out of their district's bathroom. A boy in a skirt raped 1 female student. The school board hid the incident and transferred him to another school where he kidnapped and raped the 2nd girl. If this occurred in PUSD, this board's and administration's track record for transparency guarantees the incident would be covered up as well. Ask yourself why this needs to happen here before you're willing to draft and enforce bathroom policies. In your mind, are 2 sexual assaults not enough to write the policy? Or do you need sexual assault to happen on your watch before you're willing to act?
Thank you, Ms. Van Wee. Next public comment comes from Mr. Matt Klein. Welcome, sir.
Hi, thank you. I'm the father of Peoria School District students, and as a parent, I probably all send my kids off to school and hope that they learn the academics in a safe environment. And that includes the use of the school facilities in a respectful and, when necessary, private way. For decades, Title IX has kind of supported, in part, that this would happen. It's only recently that the application of Title IX with regards to transgender students has become unsettled. As the lawyer you had earlier gave some nice background information, for sure. A lot of people point to Title VII for guidance. To me, the crux of the matter here are Title VII, Title IX, they don't define sex, and perhaps more to the point, they are silent on determining sex for the purpose of access to bathrooms, showers, locker rooms, sporting events. Whereas Title VII did say, and both of them, Title VII, Title IX, prohibited discrimination based on sex. Title VII, it seems to me the majority in that case wrote explicitly that bathroom policies for schools and gyms were outside the scope of the Bobstock case. As was presented earlier, circuit courts are mixed, and executive orders, which are in place currently, those can be changed. The Supreme Court can change it, Congress could change it, the next president could change it. It may not be your particular job to find out and make law, but you do need to make a ruling, because it seems like the federal law is not going to change anytime soon. So to me, it seems like you should look more inwards at state law. And last I know, the lawyer didn't speak on this, and I wish she could have. The governor last year signed into law, signed legislation barring transgender girls from female sports. Now, if that's true, that's directly related to Title IX.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Next public comment comes from Stephen Short, or is it Stefan? Stephen? Welcome, sir.
Hello, I'm Stephen Short, and many of the prior speakers already said what I was wanting to say. Title IX, again, the governor of Arizona did get the law passed that separate bathrooms were appropriate and legal. I feel that transgender students should go to the bathroom that they are legally defined by sex. I'm kind of disappointed in some of the comments that the board made tonight, and it may not be appropriate, but Heather Rooks and Rebecca Hill, God, you did a good job. And I'm getting emotional, but thank you for the way you voted.
Sir. Next public comment comes from Ms. Sarah Jarrell. Or Jarrell. Welcome.
Good evening. Sarah Jarrell, that's correct. I am a parent of 2 students at Cheyenne Elementary. I am the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer of the parent-teacher-student organization there. And today I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Title IX and my feelings on this situation. But first I wanted to start with a quote from an 8th grade girl, Jolene Grover, and how she felt about the situation, because I think how the students feel is very important. Being a girl is not in my head. Boys who identify as girls are no different from boys who identify as boys, except their feelings about themselves. But feelings are not why we have separate bathrooms. We have separate bathrooms because of what happens with our bodies. Bodies matter. Calling girls bigots because they do not want to use the toilet in the stall next to a boy or get undressed next to a boy is cruel and wrong. It is embarrassing enough for a girl to change a pad knowing all other girls can hear the crinkle of the packaging, but telling her she must be okay in the presence of boys because their preferred pronouns are she, her. How evil can this be? That's a quote from an 8th grade girl. I urge you, board, to do the greatest good for the greatest population. We have a very small population of trans students, and I want to protect them as well. If I think about a female-to-male trans student using a male bathroom, I feel like they could get bullied in there. I feel like they could be assaulted. Many bad things could happen. So I want you to look in your hearts and really take all of this into consideration when you're making decisions that are important regarding this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. L. Next public comment comes from Ms. Deanna Short.
Hi. A lot of people have said already what I was planning to say, but first and foremost, I'll reiterate that parents send their children to school with an expectation that they'll be safe and they will be cared for. And that's not beyond our reasoning. And I believe that there are no trans babies, trans children, trans teens. There is trans dysphoria. There is body dysphoria. And just because a boy wears a skirt or puts on makeup or whatever, he's still a boy. They're not 18 years old, and so they can't make their own decisions. The people in charge of making decisions should be making decisions that are best for all of the children. And if it takes separate bathrooms for children who think that they're trans, that's fine. But it's not okay to force that kind of thing on all children. If you're biologically a different person, you shouldn't be in that other person's bathroom. I know I said that wrong. But anyway, Loudoun County is, it was a really, really bad, sad, terrible thing that those at least 2 girls were raped and sodomized in the school bathrooms. And that should never happen. Those children are precious commodity. And their lives are ruined. And children, I'm sure that girls go to school a lot of times being very afraid that something like that is going to happen to them. And it's a very real fear. Our children have gone through at least 3 years of hardships, and some have committed suicide. And they don't need this. They don't need this pushed on them. They need to be cared for and with people who really care about them. So I think that's all that I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Short. Next public comment comes from Ms. Nikki Enchef.
Good evening, Dr. Reynolds, President Sandoval, members of the board, and girls and women everywhere. Earlier this year, I came up and gave some information about the same laws that the attorney referenced, and basically what I said back then, in closing, there is no statute, regulation, or binding court opinion that requires this district to engage in the practice of allowing students to use opposite-sex bathrooms. According to what the attorney said, the Ninth Circuit Court that applies here said that Title IX does not, just because Title IX authorizes sex-segregated bathrooms does not mean they were required to, but we do, and there's a reason that we do. In her own conclusions, Bostic is completely irrelevant, and the Ninth Circuit says it makes it clear that cisgender students do not have a constitutional right to bathrooms that exclude transgender students, but has not ruled on whether non-transgender students have a right to use a bathroom that corresponds with their gender identity. First of all, none of us are saying that transgender students can't use a bathroom. A girl who identifies as a boy has every right to access the girl's bathroom. A boy who identifies as a girl has every right to access the boy's bathroom. What we don't want is them to access opposite-sex bathrooms. And in conclusion, you have a practice that you can't even define with anybody that a previous speaker mentioned using a 504 plan, which would be a good solution for this so that everybody understood what you're doing and why you're doing it. But you don't have that, and I think that is a dereliction of duty, that you do not have a clearly defined practice of what you are doing by choice, not by law, and keeping it from all of the parents and all students in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Enchef. Next public comment comes from Megan Bridges.
Hello, good evening. Mine is short. So I just came here today to just urge the board to draw a line in the sand with this bathroom issue. If we begin making all these adjustments and we're putting the transgender in with the girls or in with the boys, I just think this is a slippery slope, and it's going to get worse and worse. And in the next few years or even sooner, Peoria Unified School District is going to be facing the same problems that Washington Elementary School District is. And I'm really grateful that my kids don't have to go to Washington Elementary School District, and I think a lot of people are. But if we allow the bathroom issue, there will be more coming. It will continue to go. And so that's why I was just here tonight, like, we're just drawing the line in the sand now. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bridges. Next public comment comes from Ms. Trina Berg.
Good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the board, Superintendent Reynolds, Cabinet. Thank you for this opportunity tonight. So I have a couple thoughts on this. I've heard multiple reasons why we shouldn't allow trans students in bathrooms of their identity. The biggest one that's always brought up is the fear of sexual assault. I'm a girl, grew up a girl, identify as a girl. My entire life that has been a possibility of something that can happen. But I can tell you it's never once been a fear that I had because of a trans girl, ever. You are way more likely to be abused by a family member, by someone at your church, by a coach, by someone in your family, by mom's boyfriend, whatever. It's my turn, don't be rude. So if the trans issue, if having trans students in the bathroom was the reason why people were being sexually assaulted, you would think this would be a new thing, and it's definitely not a new thing. So that's just one of my thoughts on that. Another thought is, how do we solve this? So one, we could shut down our bathrooms completely and put a bunch of porta-johns on campus. Then every single person has a single disgusting use bathroom, and you know what? Maybe that would also stop the vaping and the drugs, because who wants to stand in a porta potty longer than you have to? That would solve the issue, okay? That would. Everyone would be in a single bathroom. There's no gender bathrooms. You just wait in line now like you're at a concert or something. Another option would be make all bathrooms like built-in single bathrooms. But if that's what you want, then are you asking right now the legislature to fund more money to do that? Because we certainly don't have the funding for that. So if that's an option for you, then get on the phone and start calling your elected officials and tell them that's what you want money to go to for schools. But really, I've also heard, there's no such thing, there's this, there's that. You are who you are. None of us woke up one day and decided we were going to be gay or straight or a boy or a girl. You are what you are. And I've also heard, I've heard things about genetics and how there's no such thing. And I always find the genetics argument issue, because every human, every Homo sapien on this planet shares 99.9% of our same genetics. And yet we are all very different from that very one small percent of genes. There's 124 genes that determine your hair color, 16 genes for eye color. We share 70% of protein coding genes with mice and about 44.1% genes with bananas. If you think that genes, your single XY chromosome, determines everything about your sexuality, I think we are selling ourselves short for how amazing our genetics are. Now, this is a very small population of students, and I can tell you probably my entire life I have shared bathrooms with trans students, but I don't know it. Because I'm in a stall, and I'm not worried about what they're doing in the next stall over. I don't care what they have in their pants at all. It's not my business. But if there is a student, a male student, who's going in, it sounds like our issue really is harassment. Let's teach our boys better. Let's teach them to stop sexually harassing our women.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. Next public comment comes from Ms. Laura Tepason.
Today I speak on behalf of 133 Liberty High School girls. The facts of this 133 Liberty High School girls. The facts of this Title IX bathroom saga case are straightforward. The evidence, the preponderance of the evidence through few of their statements will show how scared, uncomfortable, and unsafe in school they all feel. We ask you to find the best logical solution to accommodate the one biological male student, and not based on fantasy movies or laws that don't even exist. While you work effectively in finding it, we ask you that you immediately remove the person's access to the girls' bathrooms, and I quote, "I'm worried about my younger sisters using the bathroom now. They are young and small, and the biological men will easily overpower them This decision is horrific and disgusting to think about. Hello, I'm a senior at Liberty High School. I used the passing period to use the bathroom. I walked in and was startled to see a man who had a beard standing there looking at the girls who walk in and wait for their turn. He simply stood there by the sink, staring at the girls in line while whispering to his group of female friends who were vaping. It is clearly a man, regardless of what he claims to be. His sex is a male. There is no debate about it. School restrooms are not the place to experiment with any identity crisis. It is a place to use the bathroom and leave. Last time I checked, we are supposed to be a district that keeps the students' best interest in mind. How can we do that when girls are being told to go out of their way when that is our bathroom to begin with? It is so sick that the school board would even consider having males be able to be in bathrooms with females. I'm so disgusted that government officials are bending the knee to trans students and letting them use the female bathroom, whether they want to harm female students or not. Female students should never be scared to use the bathroom. This just shows the government would rather protect biological males who have the potential to harm female students than protect females who are biologically weaker and smaller than men. A major inconvenience of using nurses' bathrooms is that there is only one, and girls need to walk 3 minutes or more to get to that, especially if they are across the campus, Dr. Sorensen. I am a female student at Liberty High School. Myself and many of my female classmates are very uncomfortable in the bathroom with him. Not only is this strong, but it is unsafe for the female students. When he walks in the bathroom, I can immediately see the fear and uncomfort on my peers' faces. We constantly live in fear of it. He will harm or rape a female student. It is absolutely disgusting to me that our government officials would pass something like this that puts female students at harm. They have failed me and my female peers. It is sad to hear that our government would rather protect the feelings of one individual over the safety of entire gender. This is especially unbelievable since in other states there have been instances I have to use the restroom during my 7 hours of learning. I expect to go in the restroom and get out, not see a biological male staring awkwardly at me. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Hope
Ms.
you find a
Tipasan.
solution.
Anytime. Next public comment comes from Ms. Jody Brackett.
Just wanted to say somebody that has come up before that you're just discrediting these girls and parents that worried about their children and what they spoke of. I don't know why I'm even wasting my time speaking. You're obviously going to do what you're always have been doing, is going against common sense and compassion for these girls. For the love of God, do the right thing for once and actually care for these girls and their families. Remember, it's guidance from the government of Title IX. Pay attention to the words, guidance. Can't wait till safety and the common good comes back.
Thank you, Ms. Brackett. Next public comment comes from Ms. Christina Rogers.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this, but are we like running out of time?
We've got 10 minutes, so
Are any of you girls wanting to speak? Does she have a
what is your name? Do you have a green slip? Oh, no, I don't. Oh, I apologize.
Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I really hope you guys take that into consideration when you're deciding what you're doing, because regardless what the law says or doesn't say, you guys have the power to protect our girls. And not only that, I know that there may be girls going into the boys' bathroom, but the thing is, boys don't have the same insides as girls. And to hear that little girl, the speech that they just said about her having to change her pad and things like that, I think every biological woman in here have been in the bathroom and had that same fear that somebody's going to hear them doing that. And now you have to, these girls are all going through the same thing and we're still embarrassed. And now you have to worry about a boy being next to you who absolutely, no matter if they think or feel that they're a girl, will not have to do what we do, period.
And that's what should be thinking. It doesn't matter if they feel like they're a girl. They will never, ever be one. So we need to take that into consideration to respect these poor young girls who should be able to go to the bathroom and be next to somebody who is experiencing and going through the same thing in adolescence. Because it is hard enough to grow up and go through adolescence to add the pressure of knowing that there's a boy next to you peeing or doing whatever he's doing. It's hard enough to pee next to a girl. So please take this into consideration. I am begging you, if you're parents of children, to keep them protected. I don't know if all of you have children or not, but I'm begging you, even if you don't, to at least protect ours. We are not against transgender students. I'm not shunning them for what they feel, but I am also asking you to respect the other part of that equation, which is the girls. There is such a very, very, very small percent that we can accommodate, and they can still feel safe in a nurse's bathroom, a teacher's bathroom, somewhere else, and let the 99.9% of the other girls feel safe in their biological sex bathroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Next public comment comes from Michelle Williams. Thank you, sir. Next public comment will come from Will Williams.
I think that was the family that left.
Oh, gotcha. All right, thank you for that. All right, next public comment comes from Ms. Jennifer C.
As I'm listening week after week after week to this discussion, I think we're leaving empathy out of our discussions. Our kids are able to practice empathy on the playground when their friend gets hurt, when their feelings are hurt, and they can come alongside them and they sit down and they put their arm around them, they ask if they're okay. Okay, ready to go play? And they go on together and play. I think women are lacking empathy for these transgender kids, and I think those of us on the other side might be lacking empathy for the concerns of these families and the parents that are really trying to wrestle with this. So I say these things with empathy, but transgender students are often being presented here as villains. There's a term in psychology and therapy called fortune telling. It's a response to anxiety where a person will think of something that they're anxious about and they will create these scenarios that are going to happen if this one thing way back here were to happen. Transgender students do not deserve the penalty of being banned from the bathroom that aligns with their gender as a fortune-telling response to fictional predators. As of today, we haven't had, across our district, from what I know and what I've heard, we haven't had sexual assaults in the bathrooms. But we have had transgender kids or gay kids, lesbian kids, bullied and picked on for their sexual identities. That is something that happens. Transgender students should not be held responsible for any potential predatory individual assuming a fake identity to perpetrate on other individuals in the bathroom. Those individuals should be held responsible for their own actions when proven to have been done. And so we need to look at our transgender students and what their needs are, what their physical, emotional needs. And I, as a woman, yes, I use pads and tampons too. Maybe the problem isn't being embarrassed about having to pull those out and transgender boys' thoughts on it, maybe we as women need to do a better job of normalizing periods and pads and tampons and all the things that go along with our menstrual cycle because it's natural. We often hear people talk and evoke the name of God in this room. God created us. We can talk about periods. We can have empathy. That is not a reason to ban a student from being able to relieve themselves in the bathroom. So yes, there's 99%. Jesus went after the one, so help the 1%.
Thank you, Mrs. C. All right, final public comment tied to this line item comes from, looks like Sammy Arasadi, is that right? Arasadi. I apologize.
No problem.
Welcome.
Good evening, board. My name is Sammy Alasadi. I'm a graduate of Marshall Ranch Elementary School in Ironwood's class of 2020-21. I want to bring attention to why we are here today. Every student, every day, prepared to shape tomorrow. That's our mission. That's why the board is here. That's why parents are here. That's why students are here, and that's why members of the community are here today. We know from research that trans students are at the highest risk for severe mental illnesses and suicide. According to the Treasure Project, 1 in 5 trans youth have attempted suicide. And we also know that 47% of transgender people have been sexually assaulted at one point in their life, compared to 19% of the general population. So who is sexually assaulting whom? We also know that when we affirm the gender identity of transgender students, when we affirm their humanity, transgender students thrive. Every student, every day, prepared to shape tomorrow. So let us pause for a moment and let's reflect. How can trans students be prepared to shape tomorrow if we don't affirm their identity today? How can trans students be prepared to shape tomorrow if they face discrimination every day in our schools? Every student, every day, prepared to shape tomorrow. Trans rights are human rights. So please do the work today of affirming the rights of transgender students so that they are prepared to shape tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Lisa Ann, that concludes public comments. We'll now get into board questions, comments. If you don't mind coming up to the podium again, that would be fantastic. Again, thank you everybody for your comments this evening. Really appreciate your voice. All right, board members, questions, comments? Mrs. Hill.
Well, I appreciate everyone coming today and speaking up for the rights of women. It's interesting that we're in this month of respecting women and elevating women, and we have issues going to the restroom. It's shocking, really. It's really tough because I think that women have, we've lost a lot of ground. We have. We're losing everything, it seems like lately. Sports, the restrooms, the locker rooms, all kinds of things. It's very upsetting to me. This is something that I hold very deeply that we really need to work on. And we need to set policy for this. We cannot open that door. Once you open that door, it's just one baby step and then everything else, the floodgates open. I'm very, very, very concerned about allowing the wrong sex utilizing the girls' bathroom. The girls are the ones that are always going to be subjugated. They're going to be the ones that are going to have the problems. The boys aren't going to get raped in a girls' restroom. The girls are. And even if there isn't a problem with them physically getting touched or whatever, there's still an uncomfortable position for them. They should not have to worry about their private space. That's their private space. We have a right as a board to protect that space. That's our job. Before we even get to the curriculum or anything else, that's our job. And we still can provide restrooms for everyone. We just have to make sure, they're the appropriate restrooms. We have nurses' restrooms. We might have administration restrooms that are appropriate for them. Or if they can use the restroom of their biological sex. From what was spoken, it does sound like, Biden's executive ruling obviously is not law. And there is really no precedent for ruling and setting policy in the Ninth Circuit, which is what Arizona is. So I think it's imperative that we set a policy designating the boys using the biological boys using the boys' restroom and the girls using the biological girls' restroom. I think this is just where we're at. And I think it was made pretty clear from the lawyer, kind of what our legal backdrop is here and what we can and cannot do. And I think it's well within our rights to set policy. I do. And I think it's time we do it to protect our kids, specifically our girls. And one final thing, and you're right, God has been brought up a lot, and God created man, and God created woman. And
Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Mrs. Rex? Mrs. Rex?
I do have some questions. First of all, that's why I'm asking you, because you're a lawyer, but I was made aware of a Ninth Circuit court case that wasn't mentioned, Castell versus Maricopa County Community College. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one. Okay. Again, when I just read through it briefly, it talked about a transgender wanting to use the bathroom, and that this court case basically ruled against that. So it, looking through that, I didn't know if you could look that up, but I also you spoke about the 11th Circuit Court case in Florida. I think that's been provided a few times. And I just wonder if that 11th Circuit Court case sets precedents or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
The 11th Circuit case is not precedent in the Ninth Circuit.
Is it precedents for possibly that could it go up to the Supreme Court?
No, I mean, it's not, so I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but it's not precedent except in the 11th Circuit. If that case or another case, any of these cases went to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court made a ruling, whatever the Supreme Court ruled would be obviously the law for everyone. But that it isn't there, and so as the 11th, as just a ruling of a different circuit, it's not authority here, only in the 11th Circuit.
Okay. Those were kind of just the two questions that I had, but I think that we need to address this now. I think that just making it a practice and not having anything available to parents of what we're actually doing is not right. And we need to do something now and not put this off. So I appreciate you giving the presentation, and I think I have to agree with Ms. Hill that there's not really anything stopping us from setting a policy. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Rex. Mrs. Ewing?
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank you for putting together the extensive presentation of it and walking us all through the law behind it. So if I'm clear, Ninth Circuit Court is what applies to Arizona.
Yes.
And can you summarize what Ninth Circuit's course with regards to this topic says?
Sure. So I'm not familiar with the case that Ms. Rooks mentioned. I don't know the year of it or if it's a district court or Ninth Circuit case, so I can't speak to that. Sure. But of the cases that I reviewed and that came up when I did my research, the main case is the Citizens or Parents for Privacy versus Barr. And in that case, the Supreme Court held that cisgender students do not have a right to use bathrooms that are that are only, where only in other words, they don't have a right to require that their bathroom be only for people of the same biological sex, okay? So to use the language that we've been hearing, in comments, like girls don't have a right to not have transgender girls in their bathroom in the Ninth Circuit. That is binding law, okay? But it didn't review it from the other direction. Do transgender students have a right to use a bathroom of their choice? That question hasn't come to the Ninth Circuit. So, I mean, you could look at the way they ruled in that bar case and compare it to how the other courts ruled to reach a conclusion about what they would probably do, but they have not addressed that question directly.
So if a policy was created, it would be addressing both of those issues, and part of it would say law says that that's not allowed, and part of it would say that the law hasn't answered that question.
Right. So, I mean, the way these things come up, obviously, is, or I shouldn't say obviously, but the way these things come up is a school board passes a policy. And if there isn't law in your circuit, then, you're doing the best you can. You're making the best decision that you think you can make based on what you know about the law and what you know about policy. But if a student of whatever, any kind of student challenges that law and it goes up to the court, then just because the law wasn't there already doesn't mean you couldn't either win or lose. In other words, it could go against you when it finally got to court, or it could go in favor of you when it finally got to court. But it's not, I mean, that's, it's a problem with the law, I guess. It's like there's a lack of clarity about things. And so there's a lack of clarity here. And if you take certain actions, then there's a risk of being sued and potentially losing. But you might not. We don't know that for certain. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And then just because it was brought up, somebody was talking about what Governor Ducey signed in relation, it wasn't in relation to bathrooms, it was relation to transgenders being in sports. Does that apply to this at all?
So all of these cases are federal law cases, and states can pass laws, but those laws can be still deemed to be unconstitutional or a violation of federal law. Federal law is the supreme law of the land. So if, for example, just to even take it right to this issue, if the Arizona legislature passed a law requiring schools to assign students to bathrooms based on their biological sex, that wouldn't mean that it couldn't still be challenged under federal law. And if the federal court said that that was a violation of the Equal Protection Clause or Title IX, it would invalidate the state law.
And if that happened, do you know if cases lost federal funding?
Well, I mean, so there are two sort of separate processes. The way a school district could potentially lose federal funding would be through a complaint through the Office of Civil Rights, and the Office of Civil Rights finds discrimination. Then they try to work it out with you and get you to change whatever policy or practice you need to change, or do whatever you need to do to fix it. If you don't, they can threaten taking away your federal funding. If a person goes to court, it has really nothing to do with your federal funding, just like the plaintiff is looking to win, to change your policy, potentially to get damages, attorney's fees. I mean, those are the things you're looking at in court, but it wouldn't impact funding. Only the government could decide to take your funding away.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mrs. Ewing. Lisa Ann, thank you. I know this discussion was in and around kind of the current state of this law, and but I do appreciate the questions that have come from the board. Some of those questions are ones that I had. Someone brought up earlier, about compassion and empathy, and one of the things that I do value first and foremost is the opinions and perspectives of everybody. Someone brought up our mantra of every student every day, and that's right. I mean, we need to make sure that all of our students feel valued, feel that they belong, and that they're cared for. There's really, and when I say all of our students, right, there's both sides. There's that of, we've heard it many times across a few different board meetings, where Some students, are uncomfortable, and I get it. I mean, these are different times. Things we can continue to change and evolve, and people kind of react to change a little bit differently. But there is a feeling there, and we can never tell somebody how they feel, right? All that said, I mean, there is a lot to unpack because we have 36,000 plus 38,000 students here that we care for, that we've committed to ensuring that they all belong, feel cared for, and are in safe and supportive environments. How this, I mean, for me, it's a matter of, how we bring everything that we've heard, bring it together, work together, on a solution that is aligned with our values and beliefs as a district, meaning the every student, every day mantra that we have, and ensuring that every student, again, can come onto a site, be successful, have an equitable opportunity to thrive as themselves, and that's important. So, but again, that is the question. Bringing all stakeholders together, bringing all the information that we have together, and let's figure this out as a community, as a student body, as leadership, our teachers, staff, and I agree. We need to do the right thing on behalf of our students, and but we need to make sure that we include all voices, in this matter as well. So that said, I do appreciate you spending the time on putting this together, and establishing some level of clarity where the law sits today. But we've got some work to do for sure. So thank you for that. Board members, any further questions, comments? Okay.
I'll just mention one last thing. I realize that we could be sued possibly if we set policy, but you know what? We could also be sued for a child being molested or voyeurism problems within the bathrooms. It goes both ways. And if I was a parent that had a child that had a man that claimed to be a woman that put his phone underneath the stall and videotaped my daughter, I'd sue your pants off. So I don't want us to be put in that position. Honestly, if we separate out the boys and the girls, we will never have that problem. It's a moot issue. It's not even a problem if you separate them out. No feelings involved here. It's biology. Nothing can happen if we separate them out, and we're not telling them that I have no problems with trans people using their own accommodations in the nurse's room or the admin building or whatever. They can use their own sex bathroom, but we don't want to go down this road. We're really going to put ourselves in a very bad place if we go down this road. And I think this is where we do draw the line in the sand.
Mrs. Hill, thank you for that. And that's right? If that were to happen, there is discipline, and absolutely. I think in the same breath, I would hate for any student to commit suicide because they didn't feel like they belonged or were cared for. So, well, but anyway, and absolutely agreed with what you said. That's right, for sure. All right, very good. Were you gonna? Okay. All right, no further questions, comments. We'll go on to section 10, informational reports. 10.1, report on upcoming meetings and events. These reports are on our website for your viewing at your convenience. 10.2, 10.1 isn't on our website, or maybe. Danielle, any events or meetings that you'd like to report out on?
President Sandoval, nothing to add this evening.
Okay. Legislative, state, and local updates. Ms. Myers.
Thank you, President Sandoval. Members of the governing board.
Ms. Myers, pause just 1 second, please. I think we're okay. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. Good evening. Again, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, and Dr. Reynolds. The week of February 24th was the crossover week at the Capitol. Crossover week is when lawmakers turn their attention to moving bills into the second legislative chamber for consideration. Legislators also spend hours in floor sessions debating and voting on lengthy lists of bills as they continue to work through the legislative session. There is still much to be done, and the legislature will ultimately have to agree within the House and the Senate, along with the governor, to finalize one state budget and other policy and statute work that is being considered before the session ends. Administration is monitoring the progress, and as there are developments, we will bring updates to the governing board as appropriate at future meetings. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. All right, now we'll move on to our budget, facilities, planning, and construction report 10.3. These reports are on our website for your viewing at your convenience. 10.4, district budget report for the month of January 2023, also on our website. 11.1, board member opportunity to readdress agenda items. Ms. Hill, any items that you would like to readdress?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Ricks?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Ewing?
Question here, because we did not approve that position, what happens with the executive director for exceptional student services? What happens with that now?
We'll meet, regroup with our team, and put a plan together.
Okay, so does that need to be something that we request to put on a future agenda item, or?
No.
Okay, so that piece I wanted to make sure. And then, so nothing on that. And on the, with regards to reading, I know you and I had a conversation about how are we, now that some of our reading specialists are no longer covered underneath the grant, how are we covering that with the, so this would be like a special, a Friday report?
I think so we're not quite there yet?
Oh.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ms. Ricks. You good? Okay. No worries. All right. Moving on to 11.2, requests for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Mrs. Hill.
I would like to propose that we produce a policy stating that the biological boys use only the biological boys' restroom, and that the biological girls use only the biological girls' restroom, separating out the two. So I would like to have policy written on this.
I will second that.
Dr. Reynolds, any questions on that? Or good? All right. All right. Anything else, Ms. Hill? All right.
No, thank you.
Mrs. Rooks.
I would like to request for a future agenda item on the mental health professional demonstration grant that our district applied for 3 years ago. I would like to have it brought to the board for, I guess, a presentation on what that whole initiative was, where we're at now, and just everything that was a part of that plan, because I think that needs to be discussed, it needs to be brought to the board, and the community needs to know what the district has been doing for the past couple of years. So that's one of the things I'd like to request.
Okay.
I will second.
Is that, Dr. Reynolds, is that clear? I mean,
Yes, although the agenda for our study session is not set yet, I do believe that that's a topic for the next study session.
And then I wanted to also just, I guess this can be a Friday report, where we're at on our IEPs for special education in the district. I guess just a breakdown of how many are in compliance, and if there is any that are in non-compliance, I'd like to just see those numbers. So.
I'll second that. Good. Is that?
Okay, I will try this again.
Ms. Ricks, is that, you're good?
I'm good.
All right. Ms. Ewing.
Didn't mean to overtalk you. So back to what I was requesting earlier, I was underneath the wrong agenda item for it. So as far as I would like to see, and it can be a Friday report, where we are in meeting our reading levels per grade level, and then how we are helping our students reach up to grade level. And then I know and I'm asking this because with some of the supports going away, how are we addressing those things? And then I know you and I talked about maybe a more comprehensive approach to reading in general across our grade levels. So that was probably a lot. So
that is a lot. So we'll do our best, and then after that.
So I think I could probably shorten it for you. Would you like me to do that?
I think I got it.
Okay. All right.
I'll second that.
Anything else, Ms. Ewing? All right, very good. Moving on to 12.1, adjournment. I do need a motion to adjourn this meeting at 9:32 p.m.
I move to adjourn.
I will second.
All right, Ms. Contra, I have a motion made by Mrs. Hill, a second by Mrs. Ewing. If you can run us through a voice vote, that'd be great. Thanks.
President Sandoval,
Yay.
Mrs. Hill,
Aye.
Mrs. Rooks,
Aye.
Mrs. Ewing.
Aye.
All right, motion passes with 4 yeas and 1 not present. Thank you, board members, Dr. Reynolds, cabinet team, community. Have a great evening. Stay safe.